Chapter 74. In the next few days, Yi Guqin and Situ Hongxue continued to train in the Great Wild Forest. After condensing the seed of the sword heart, Yi Guqin's understanding of swordsmanship improved by leaps and bounds. Some of the previous obstacles were naturally cleared up. In just a few days, Yi Guqin had truly cultivated the Aurora Quick Sword to the realm of great accomplishment. The Aurora Quick Sword was the swordsmanship that Yi Guqin had been practicing since he was in the Xia family. Hence, after condensing the seed of the sword heart, the first swordsmanship to break through to the realm of great accomplishment was the Aurora Quick Sword. And after entering the realm of great accomplishment, Yi Guqin also comprehended the ultimate move of the Aurora Quick Sword, the Daylight Break. The Aurora Quick Sword was known for its speed, and the ultimate move, the Daylight Break, was far superior to the ultimate move, the Aurora Pass, in terms of power and speed. As for the other swordsmanship, Yi Guqin believed that he was not far from a breakthrough. Finally, after a few days, Yi Guqin and Situ Hongxue walked out of the Great Wild Forest. When they walked out of the Great Wild Forest, both of them were silent. Although the time spent together was short, to Situ Hongxue, it was definitely an unforgettable memory. They practiced swordsmanship together, sharpened, barbecued, and rested together without any ill feelings. And Yi Guqin's eyes were always deep and clear when he looked at her, unlike the other so-called God's favored sons who only coveted Situ Hongxue's beauty. Even when she was with Yi Guqin, Situ Hongxue began to question her own charm. But no matter what, Situ Hongxue knew that she was wavering. Perhaps it was not to the extent of being infatuated, but Situ Hongxue had to admit that Yi Guqin was indeed different from others in her heart. Her feelings toward Yi Guqin were also very complicated. She respected her master, admired him as a sword Dao Grand Master, and faintly felt an indescribable feeling. Especially when Yi Guqin was teaching her swordsmanship, his serious expression was very charming to Situ Hongxue. Yi Guqin was handsome to begin with, and the way he was immersed in swordsmanship only added to his charm. As a result, after leaving the great desolate forest, Situ Hongxue had always been in a state of absent-mindedness. Although the few days they spent together were wonderful, it was also short. "Young Master Yi, we're out," Situ Hongxue said. "Yes, but I've said it a few times already. Just call me Yi Guqin. Calling me young master is too awkward." Yi Guqin shook his head and smiled. Yi Guqin also admired this intelligent and beautiful girl who was quite talented in swordsmanship. Then, "Yi Guqin." Situ Hongxue's voice was as soft as a mosquito's. She turned her head, and her beautiful face was suddenly dyed with a touch of bright red. Yi Guqin faintly nodded, but his eyebrows were slightly raised. The Blood Tower's blood token in his origin ring had reacted, and must have sent a message over. "It's time to say goodbye." Yi Guqin sighed. "Are we about to leave?" Situ Hongxue raised her head, staring at Yi Guqin with her beautiful eyes, a myriad of thoughts running through her mind. In the end, the temporary beauty was like the moon in the water, unfathomable. "You're very talented in swordsmanship. If you persevere, you'll definitely be able to walk your own path of swordsmanship," Yi Guqin said. Situ Hongxue bit her cherry lips, and for some reason, she suddenly said, "In a few days, I'll have a marriage alliance with Murong Ditian of the Murong family." Yi Guqin was stunned, and then fell silent. Looking at the silent Yi Guqin, Situ Hongxue couldn't help but clench her jade-like hands. Her marriage alliance with Murong Ditian didn't have the slightest bit of emotion in it, and was only an exchange of benefits between aristocratic families. Situ Hongxue thought that she didn't care who she was with, as long as it was for the good of her family. However, after meeting Yi Guqin, Situ Hongxue realized that it was very difficult for her to convince herself like this. As long as they met, it was fate and also a calamity. Yi Guqin remained silent, and Situ Hongxue smiled. Her heart had never been so tight before. "I understand. Thank you for the guidance you've given me these past few days." Situ Hongxue turned around, and her figure turned into a shadow, and she quickly floated away. However, When she turned around and left, there was a drop of sparkling and translucent tear. Only when Situ Hongshue's figure gradually faded away, did Yi Guqin let out a deep sigh. He opened his palms, and in his left hand was a hairpin, which he had forgotten to return to Situ Hongxue. In his right hand was the blood token of Blood Listening Tower, which had a message from the demon judge. The blood mission this time was to exterminate the Situ family on the day of the marriage alliance between the Situ and Murong families. Just as I expected. Are we going to annihilate the Situ family? Yi Guqin sighed. His identity was not only Yi Guqin of the Sword Sect, but also the Sword Demon of Blood Listening Tower. As an assassin of the Blood Lament Tower, he didn't have the right to question the mission. Since the mission was to annihilate the Situ clan, then as an assassin of the Blood Lament Tower, Yi Guqin definitely had to act against the Situ clan. Moreover, Yi Guqin concluded that as long as the mission was successful, he would definitely be qualified to enter the 18 blood prisons. Not only would he be able to stay in the first 8 prisons, but he would also be able to go to the bottom of the 18 blood prisons and have a chance to obtain the Shura sword essence. Even if it was for the Shura sword essence, Yi Guqin had to take action. Situ Hongxue, I hope we won't have to face each other, Yi Guqin thought to himself. His figure flashed, and he began to head to the rendezvous point set by the demon judge. However, Yi Guqin himself did not know what kind of storm his trip to the sword-seeking steel had caused. In an instant, the most popular name in the entire Beichen mansion was Yi Guqin of the Sword Sect. The former #1 genius of the Milky Way Prefecture, the holder of the title of Sword Sect, had once again shocked the world after a long silence. In the sword-seeking steel, he had furiously killed Zhao Fengyang, a disciple of the heavenly saber list from the saber-conferred royal palace. With a sword that split the sky, he had severed the arm of blood saber Mo Juechen, who was ranked 5th on the heavenly saber list. At the sword-seeking steel, he had comprehended the transformative sword art, and in addition to the small success spiritual sword art, he had destroyed the sword-seeking steel. With such talent and such a stance, he was like a rising sun that shook the world. In an instant, Yi Guqin's reputation in the Beichen mansion had even surpassed that in the Milky Way Prefecture. Everyone in the streets and alleys were talking about Yi Guqin's deeds. Even the impending marriage between the two families seemed to have been diluted by Yi Guqin's news. This news naturally did not only circulate in the Beichen mansion, but also in the neighboring manors, including the Milky Way Prefecture. Milky Way Prefecture, Xia Clan's core area. The originally colorful garden, rockery, and lakeside was now frozen 3 feet deep, with frost and snow filling the sky. Amidst the flying snow, a blue-robed beauty with a head of dazzling ice-blue hair danced with her sword. Styx River Sword Art, Ice Phoenix Break. With a shout from the girl, a terrifying frost chi comparable to the 8th cycle of the chi refining stage burst out from her body. Terrifying sword chi gushed out as frost and snow gathered together, seemingly forming an ice phoenix. The phoenix flew towards the frozen lake in front of her. Boom! An earth-shattering sound erupted, and the frozen lakeside shattered. Rocks and ice crystals burst out, and water splashed in all directions. This sword attack was enough to instantly kill an ordinary chi refinement master. Hehe, Yubing's spirit grade sword art has finally reached the initial stage. A figure walked over with a smile. It was the Xia clan's patriarch, Xia Yuan. Father. Xia Yubing sheathed her sword. As expected of the Xia clan's phoenix. Your strength is enough to challenge the top 5 of the Heaven Pride ranking. Xia Yuan was greatly comforted. It's still not enough. Only by completely comprehending the ice sword will I be able to firmly sit at the top. Xia Yubing's voice was resolute. It's good to have confidence, but... Xia Yuan seemed to have thought of something, and a worried expression appeared on his face. Father, what are you worried about? Asked Xia Yubing. Xia Yuan sighed, and told Xia Yubing everything about the sword quest tablet in the Beichen mansion. Oh, Yi Guqin has grown to such a level. Even Xia Yubing was a little surprised. She possessed the North River Sword King's complete inheritance, which was why she could grow at such an astonishing speed. But what did Yiguchen have? A cripple whose sword vein was destroyed, whose sword embryo was stolen, was actually able to cultivate to such a level. This made Xia Yubing faintly feel a sense of danger. "Father, don't disturb me. I'm going into seclusion again." Xia Yubing regained her calm, her voice as cold as water. Xia Yuan sighed, nodded, and left. "It's not enough, it's still not enough. The initial stage spirit grade sword art is not enough. With the ice sword I will definitely be able to improve the Styx River sword art. At that time, even Yiguchen will be swept away by my sword." A sharp light flashed in Xia Yubing's blue eyes. Chapter 75. Firmament City was an extremely prosperous city in the Beichun Prefecture. It was also where the Situ family was located. The city was named after the current head of the Situ family, Situ Lingshao. This showed the Situ family's status in Firmament City. It could be said that even the Beichun Prefecture master could only be considered a guest in Firmament City. This was the foundation of a super family. It was far from what the 5 great families in the Milky Way Prefecture could compare to. Recently, the flow of people in Firmament City had increased significantly. Forces from all over the Beichun Prefecture had entered the city. Their goal was, without exception, to participate in the upcoming marriage between the 2 great families. As the 2 super families that had been rooted in the Beichun Prefecture for nearly 1,000 years, their grievances were difficult to settle. There were battles and negotiations. In short, they had always maintained a balance. The Beichun Prefecture master was happy to see the 2 families maintain a balance. The marriage was between the top geniuses of the 2 families. The significance of this marriage was even more obvious. Some people guessed that the 2 families were going to unite. In an extremely remote courtyard in Firmament City, Yiguchen, who was dressed in black and wearing a blood-red mask, had also arrived at the gathering place of the Bloodthirsty Tower's assassins. The red-haired ghost, Nightingale, and the other 50 iron-masked assassins had already gathered. As for the silver-masked assassins and gold-masked assassins, they did not show up. In front of the iron-masked assassins stood a tall figure hidden in a pitch-black cloak. It was the demon magistrate of the Bloodthirsty Tower. "The target of this scarlet mission is the Situ family. All of you listen to my orders. The experts of the Situ family will be restrained by me. You will mainly deal with the young disciples of the Situ family and the Death Warriors," the demon magistrate said in a cold voice. "Yes." The iron-masked assassins replied. Yiguchen was thinking about who had bribed the Bloodthirsty Tower to destroy the Situ family. Could it be the Murong family? But the Murong family is about to have a marriage with the Situ family. Why would they do such a thing? Otherwise, it could be the Beichun Prefecture master who did not want to wait for the 2 families to unite and directly took action. Yiguchen pondered, but he did not have a clue. However, what Yiguchen could be sure of was that the Situ family definitely had a secret that made people have no choice but to take action. It was just that Yiguchen wasn't clear about the reason behind it. However, Yiguchen did not dwell on this matter. To him, it was fine as long as he could complete the mission. For some reason, the image of Situ Hongshua's beautiful face appeared in his mind again. Yiguchen sighed in his heart. After the demon judge pointed out the main points, many of the iron-masked assassins also dispersed. Before the red-haired ghost left, he gave Yiguchen a deep look. Yiguchen did not mind. As an assassin organization that hid in the shadows, Bloodthirst Tower had strict rules when carrying out their missions. If the red-haired ghost dared to cause trouble for Yiguchen during the mission, the consequences were not something he could bear. "Sword Demon, please wait." Just as Yiguchen was about to leave, the demon judge suddenly spoke. Yiguchen's expression changed slightly under his mask. He said, "May I know what the demon judge wants? The blood mission this time is extremely important, but you've caused quite a stir," Yiguchen from the sword sect. The demon judge said deeply. Yi Guchen was not surprised that his identity had been exposed. Assassins in Bloodthirst Tower might not know each other's identities, but those of a higher level, such as the 4 judges, the Tower Master, and so on, would definitely know the identities of the assassins below them. It was a spur of the moment, but I definitely did not reveal my identity as the Sword Demon. Yi Guchen said casually. Although I don't know how you managed to catch the Tower Master's attention, I just hope you won't disappoint him. After the demon judge finished speaking, his figure flickered and vanished. Yi Guchen's eyes flickered slightly. He was also a little curious about the Bloodthirst Tower Master who he had never met before. After all, he was an expert in the way of the sword who could fuse sword intent into his flute music. After a few days, Firmament City was completely bustling with noise and excitement. The streets and alleys were decorated with lanterns and colored banners, making the already bustling Firmament City even more festive. Tonight was the day of the marriage alliance between the Murong and Situ families. In the entire Beichen Manor, who knew how many young men and women were wringing their hands? The lovers of their dreams were about to get married, but they had to admit that Murong Ditian and Situ Hongxue were indeed the most compatible pair. As for whether they truly had feelings for each other, there was no need for outsiders to know. At this moment, in the central region of Firmament City, where the Situ family was located, there was already an endless stream of people and carriages. There was an endless stream of people coming to celebrate. In a pavilion of the Situ family, Situ Hongxue was wearing a red wedding dress, which fully outlined her curvaceous body. Her thin makeup was different from usual, and she gave off a delicate feeling. However, her gaze was slightly absent-minded, and it was unknown what she was thinking about. Big Sister Hongxue. Beside her, Situ Ling saw Situ Hongxue's state and said worriedly. She knew that not only did Situ Hongxue not have any feelings for Murong Ditian, she even faintly felt a trace of disgust. If it was before, Situ Hongxue could still conceal her disgust for Murong Ditian, then after the trip to the sword-seeking steel, Situ Hongxue could no longer conceal her disgust. As a woman, Situ Ling faintly knew that Situ Hongxue's change might be because of one person. The sword sect's Yi Guchen. However, Situ Ling was also helpless about this. Perhaps Yi Guchen's talent and strength were not inferior to Murong Ditian, but to the Situ family, the marriage alliance with Murong Ditian would definitely benefit them the most. Hongxue, the marriage ceremony is about to begin. You should prepare. A middle-aged man's voice sounded from outside the room. It was the Situ family's patriarch, Situ Lingxiao. Yes, father. Situ Hongxue's voice did not have any warmth. Outside the door, Situ Lingxiao sighed and said, "Sigh, I have let you down. However, only by the marriage alliance between the two families can we completely stabilize the foundation of our Situ family. Hongxue understands." Situ Hongxue's voice still did not have any warmth. At this moment, the Situ family's guest hall was already filled with distinguished guests, and there was a hubbub of voices. Reporting, North Star Mansion Master and Prince Yuani have arrived. A servant of the Situ family said loudly. Just as the voice sounded, 2 figures directly entered. One of them was wearing a brocade robe and had an imposing figure. It was the North Star Mansion Master. The other figure was wearing a golden robe. He had a handsome face and jade-like skin. It was obvious that he was a person who lived like a prince. However, the vigorous vital energy that was faintly concealed made it impossible for others to overlook his strength. It's the North Star Mansion Master. Prince Yuani has also come. It was no surprise that these people were so surprised because there were 2 outstanding heavenly prides in the Saint Origin dynasty's imperial family. One was Yuan Mia, who had profound attainments in Sword Dao and had left his name on the sword-seeking tablet. The other was Prince Yuani. He was unique among the 12 princes of the Saint Origin dynasty and had obtained the title of Crown Prince. Although he was not ranked on the Saint Origin Heaven's Pride list, it was rumored that his strength was not much weaker than Yuan Mie's. Seeing that Prince Yuani had come to congratulate them, the surrounding guests were naturally surprised. Chapter 76. Prince Yuani's gaze was indifferent as he chatted with the North Star Mansion Master from time to time. The mansion masters of the Saint Origin dynasty were all appointed by the royal family. Therefore, the relationship between the North Star Mansion Master and Prince Yuani was naturally not shallow. However, when Prince Yuani looked around the Situ mansion that was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, there was a trace of inexplicable meaning in his eyes. Not long after, the people of the Murong family arrived. The person in the lead was wearing a red robe. He had a dignified appearance and an extraordinary temperament. It was Murong Ditian. Beside him was the Murong family's patriarch, Murong Fengyun, and many other elders. The crowd was densely packed. The surrounding guests were somewhat puzzled. Although they were here to pick up the bride, there were too many people. Almost 2/3 of the upper echelons of the Murong family were here. However, because today was a day of celebration, these people did not think too much about it. They only thought that the Murong family really attached great importance to this marriage. Outside the Situ mansion, Yi Guqin, who was wearing a black robe and whose face was covered with blood, was looking at everything with cold eyes. Perhaps because today was the day of the wedding, the people of the two families were gathered together. Therefore, the number of people patrolling outside the Situ mansion was reduced by a lot. Yi Guqin quietly waited for the demon magistrate's order. Finally, when Situ Hongxue, who was wearing a wedding dress, appeared, all the guests sighed. She was indeed worthy of being one of the beauties of the Saint Origin dynasty. However, Situ Hongxue's beautiful eyes were slightly absent-minded. She looked around the hall but did not see the figure in her heart. As for the illusion of snatching the bride, now that she thought about it, it was just a ridiculous delusion. Perhaps in his heart, I'm just a passerby that he met by chance. Situ Hongxue's eyes had a trace of sadness. She admitted that her feelings for Yi Guqin had not reached the level of undying devotion. However, she had indeed left a shadow. And this shadow was obviously not something that could be erased so easily. Hong Shui, this day has finally come. Murong Ditian smiled with a trace of complacency, like a hunter who had successfully caught his prey. To be able to make the famous beauty of the Saint Origin dynasty his exclusive property, that sense of superiority was indeed a kind of pleasure for a man. Looking at that invasive gaze, Situ Hongxue bit her lip. She was reminded of Yi Guqin's deep and clear eyes. The two of them were indeed not the same type of people. Ha, brother Situ, today is the day of the marriage between our two families. Why don't we drink a few more cups? Murong Fengyun, the head of the Murong family, laughed loudly. Of course. Situ Lingxiao also smiled. At this point, the people in the hall were exchanging toasts. The people from the two great clans were eating and drinking together, and there was a sense of harmony. Crown Prince Yuani was the only one who barely touched the food and wine. He just looked at everything with a smile. After 3 rounds of wine, Murong Fengyun suddenly opened his mouth. Situ, the Murong family has already expressed our sincerity for the marriage between our families. Shouldn't the Situ family show your sincerity as well? Only then will our families be as strong as iron. Situ Lingxiao's heart skipped a beat. The smile on his face faded slightly as he said, I wonder what kind of sincerity Brother Murong wants. I heard that Brother Situ accidentally obtained 2 immemorial sword tokens in a place of opportunity in the Endless Plains. Murong Fengyun asked in an inexplicable tone. Situ Lingxiao's expression didn't change when he heard this, but his hands that were hidden in his sleeves suddenly clenched. Brother Murong, you must be joking. I don't know what the immemorial sword token is. Situ Lingxiao replied with a smile. Oh, is that so? Let me tell you the truth. My Murong family has 1 immemorial sword token and the Saint Origin dynasty's imperial family has another one. They were both obtained from the infinite desolate plains. Murong Fengyun's tone turned cold when he saw Situ Lingxiao playing dumb. But I really don't know what the immemorial sword token is. Situ Lingxiao sighed. Big brother, don't hide it anymore. Aren't the two immemorial sword tokens in the family treasury? Suddenly, a person walked over. It was Situ Lingxiao's younger brother, Situ Jiang. Second brother, you. Situ Lingxiao's expression finally changed. Ha, brother Situ, there's no need to hide it anymore. On the other side, the North Star Mansion's master suddenly stood up. There was a faint trace of disdain in his laughter. You. Situ Lingxiao's heart suddenly sank. He wasn't stupid. If he still couldn't sense the change in the situation, then he really didn't deserve the title of family head. Disciples of the Situ family, be alert. Before Situ Lingxiao could finish his words, Situ Jiang suddenly attacked and sent a palm strike at Situ Lingxiao. Situ Lingxiao had long been on guard against Situ Jiang. He turned around and sent a palm strike. But suddenly, Situ Lingxiao felt that the Jin qi in his body wasn't flowing smoothly. His limbs and bones felt like they were being pricked by needles. The wine is poisoned. Situ Lingxiao suddenly reacted. Rumble. When the two palms collided, Situ Lingxiao, whose cultivation base had reached the life and death chamber, was actually forced back. This palm strike caused the entire hall to turn deathly silent. Everyone was dumbfounded. This scene was too sudden. Many people simply couldn't react. Brother Situ, you won't cry until you see the coffin. Since you're so tactless, then we don't need to be polite with you. Murong Fengyun, the North Star Mansion's master, Prince Yuanyi, and the others all stood out and coldly looked at Situ Lingxiao. This scene also stunned Situ Hongxue. She turned to look at Murong Ditian. Murong Ditian seemed to have already known this. At this moment, his expression was calm. He looked at Situ Hongxue and said, Hongxue, don't worry. This matter has nothing to do with you. You won't be harmed in the slightest. What are you doing? Situ Hongxue was also extremely intelligent. After thinking for a bit, she understood. This was a trap that targeted the Situ family. Murong family, the North Star Mansion's master, and even the royal family represented by Prince Yuanyi had all joined hands to eliminate the Situ family. As for the reason, it must be the so-called immemorial sword token. An ordinary man's wealth was his own ruin. Even Situ Hongxue didn't understand what the immemorial sword token was. How could it bring such a disaster to the Situ family? Where are the Situ family's iron guards? Situ Lingxiao roared. The iron guards were trained by the Situ family. The lowest cultivation level was the Qi refinement realm. Previously, there were some iron guards stationed outside. Although there were fewer than usual, they were still used as a warning. However, at this moment, the iron guards stationed outside didn't respond. Ha, brother Situ, since you're so stubborn, then don't blame me. Murong Fengyun smashed his wine cup. In the darkness, figures swept past like the Grim Reaper. It's the Bloodthirst Tower. Someone among the guests shouted. Leave no one alive. Prince Yuanyi shouted coldly. Kill. Gather the iron guards, quick. Don't kill me. This has nothing to do with us. We're only here to participate in the banquet. In an instant, the entire brightly lit Situ family's residence turned into a blood-red azure field. Because the news had to be sealed, from the beginning, the Situ family and the guests of the banquet had to be killed. Chapter 77. You've gone too far. Situ Lingxiao's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he roared, 10 great consecrators, attack. Boom. Just as Situ Lingxiao's roar faded, 10 powerful auras soared into the sky from the mansion behind the Situ family, bringing with them waves of soul ripples. A total of 10 divine soul realm experts. Not only that, several elders of the Situ family also attacked. Their auras erupted as vigorous Jinqi condensed behind their backs, turning into Jinqi wings. If the symbol of a divine soul realm expert was Jinqi condensing into a shape, then the symbol of a life and death chamber expert was Jinqi wings. Using vigorous Shen Qi to form a pair of wings and cross the void was the greatest deterrence of a life and death chamber expert. 10 divine soul realm experts and several life and death chamber elders of the Situ family, including Situ Lingxiao, who was also a life and death chamber expert. This was the foundation of a super family, which was not something the 5 big families of the Sky River Prefecture could compare to. Worthy of being a super family. However, this time, we came prepared. Prince Yuani laughed and clapped his hands. Although the majority of the planning was done by the Murong family, the initial proposal was made by Prince Yuani. As the prince of a country, his shrewdness was unimaginable. Xiao! 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 In the dark night, 10 figures burst out from the dark corners. These people were the gold mask and silver mask assassins of the Bloodthirst Tower. Rumble. Many experts fought with each other. Zhen Qi surged, and Qi waves soared into the sky. The entire mansion instantly exploded, and sounds of fighting could be heard everywhere in the large Situ family. While the gold mask and silver mask assassins were making their moves, the iron mask assassins, including Yiguchen, were all waiting for an opportunity to sneak into the Situ family and fight with the Situ family disciples. Yiguchen's blood mask was like a demon from hell. He held the supreme grade blood guillotine in his hand. Wherever his sword passed, the moonlight would turn blood red. Puchi. The blood guillotine streaked across the neck of a Situ family disciple, causing blood to spurt out. A strand of essence blood was absorbed into the blood guillotine. When the blood guillotine was completely filled, Yiguchen would obtain the opportunity to enter the 18 blood prison. And now, it was a great opportunity to replenish the flying guillotine. Although it was cruel, it was the quickest opportunity. Yiguchen would not let it go. As the sword demon, Yiguchen was a demon of the sword. In order to obtain the Shura sword intent, he was willing to pay any price, even if his hands were stained with blood. 3, 5, 10, in the end, human lives became meaningless numbers. Yiguchen's black clothes were soaked in blood. At this moment, Yiguchen's entire body was emitting an extremely strong baleful aura, just like an Azura. Yiguchen even had an illusion that as long as he killed enough people, he would be able to comprehend the Ashura sword intent. Of course, this was just nonsense. Ah! A miserable shriek came from the front. It was an assassin from Bloodthirst Tower. One by one, experts in black robes appeared. They were the iron guards that the Situ family had carefully nurtured. There were not many of them, but their quality was very high. Their cultivation was generally above the 3rd cycle of the Qi refining realm, and their strength was not bad. These iron guards fought with the iron mask assassins of Bloodthirst Tower. Both sides suffered casualties. Yiguchen's performance was too outstanding. Coupled with his iconic blood-red mask, it was difficult for him not to be targeted. It's the sword demon of Bloodthirst Tower. His name is even on the Heaven's Pride list. Kill him and let the Bloodthirst Tower know that the Situ family is not to be trifled with. A loud voice shouted. The person who spoke was the captain of the Iron Guards. He was at the 9th cycle of the Qi refining realm. Rushing Cloud Fist. The captain of the Iron Guards rushed towards Yiguchen and threw out a punch. His true Qi surged like a galloping horse, as if it carried the power of the wind and clouds. It was aimed at Yiguchen's face. A cold light flashed in Yiguchen's eyes. He circulated his blood Qi and strengthened it with the power of the dragon elephant. He moved swiftly with the shadow step, dodging the attack. The flying guillotine in his hand stabbed out. Firmament palm. The captain of the Iron Guards turned his fist into a palm. His true Qi flowed endlessly like clouds. Yiguchen's body was pushed back. He couldn't help but be shocked. As expected of a super family. Even the captain of the Iron Guards had such strength. However, Yiguchen didn't use his full strength. In order to not expose his identity, Jia Chen and Yiguchen couldn't use the sword techniques that Sword Master Yiguchen had displayed. Yiguchen could only use the techniques that he hadn't used in his identity as the sword master. Shadow Kill Sword Art, Vanishing Shadow. Yiguchen gathered his sword aura and gathered all his essence into the flying guillotine. The flying guillotine instantly emitted a bewitching blood-red glow. Although the Shadow Kill swordsmanship was a middle-grade spiritual level sword technique, it was not easy to comprehend it to the initial level. However, Yiguchen had already laid the foundation for the shadow swordsmanship, and he had the seed of sword heart. In addition to this period of training, Yiguchen had finally cultivated the Shadow Kill swordsmanship to the initial level. Vanishing Shadow was the Shadow Kill sword art's ultimate move. Kill. Yiguchen's Vanishing Shadow drew a series of afterimages under the moonlight. It was difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. Sky-piercing thunder palm. The Iron Guard captain's cultivation of the 9th transformation chi refinement realm was completely unleashed. He bombarded Yiguchen with his palm, but it directly went through his body. The palm force shattered a fake mountain behind him, sending gravel flying. Afterimage. The Iron Guard captain was shocked. He suddenly groaned. A blood-red sword tip pierced through his chest. Puff! Yiguchen pulled out his sword. Instantly, blood spurted out from the Iron Guard captain's chest. Uncle Hu! Suddenly, an angry roar with a hint of sadness sounded. A young man in the distance had killed an assassin from the Bloodthirst Tower with a punch. When he saw this scene, he couldn't help but roar. It's him. Yiguchen looked at the young man. Since the target was the Situ family, Yiguchen would have done some research beforehand. He recognized the young man at a glance. He was also a famous genius of the Situ family. He was Situ Hongshua's younger brother, Situ Hechuan. At such a young age, he was already an expert of the 5th transformation chi refinement realm. You're the sword demon of the Bloodthirst Tower. You'll pay with your life for killing Uncle Hu. Situ Hechuan's eyes were bloodshot. Although Uncle Hu was the Iron Guard captain, he was also Situ Hechuan's teacher since he was young. Although he had only been Situ Hechuan's teacher for a short while, he still had a place in Situ Hechuan's heart. Kill! Situ Hechuan swept over. His palms were like thunder, stirring up the wind and clouds. With a burst of anger, he attacked Yiguchen. At the same time, seeing the Iron Guard captain die, the surrounding Iron Guard's eyes were bloodshot. They looked at Yiguchen as if they were looking at an irreconcilable enemy. Kill him and avenge the captain. 7 Iron Guards, including Situ Hechuan, attacked at the same time. Among them, the weakest was at the 3rd transformation chi refinement realm, while the strongest was at the 7th transformation chi refinement realm. Not to mention Yiguchen, who was at the 9th transformation chi refinement realm. Even a true 7th transformation chi refinement realm prodigy might not be able to withstand so many attacks at the same time. Moreover, they attacked at the same time while Yiguchen was unprepared. The sword demon is going to die. Not far away, red-haired Ghost saw this scene and shook his head. On the other side, Nightingale saw this and remembered that Yiguchen had helped her once in the 18 Blood prison. Now, she wanted to help but was stopped by one of the Iron Guards. As for the other assassins of the Bloodthirst Tower, there was no reason for them to attack. They were cold-blooded and ruthless killers. Camaraderie did not exist in an organization like the Bloodthirst Tower. Just when everyone thought that the sword demon was about to die, Yiguchen smiled coldly under the blood-red mask. With a flip of his hand, a blood-red disc array fell into his palm. Chapter 78. This blood-red disc was the little Ashura sword formation that Yiguchen had obtained in the 18 Blood prison. Although the little Ashura sword formation was a low-grade human rank sword formation, its power was extraordinary. If it was in the hands of an expert in the Divine Soul realm, the power it could unleash would be unimaginable. Yiguchen had not reached the Divine Soul realm, and he had not even reached the Qi refining realm, so he could only infuse his profound Qi into it. Fortunately, Yiguchen's talent in sword principle was extraordinary, and the little Ashura sword formation was also a kind of sword principle. Therefore, after a lot of practice, Yiguchen could barely control 12 blood-red flying swords. As Yiguchen infused his profound chi into it, the complicated formation patterns on the blood-red disc lit up in an instant. 12 mini flying swords flashed out and turned into 12 bloody long swords in a breath. The 12 blood-red flying swords scattered in all directions, stabbing at Situ Hshuan and the Iron Guards. Although Yiguchen could not fully exert the power of the little Ashura sword formation with his current realm, the 12 flying swords all contained the power of Ashura. Although the power of Ashura was not pure, Yiguchen had suffered a lot when he broke the formation. That was because Yiguchen had an extremely strong body, so he could temporarily resist the destruction of the power of Ashura. However, Situ Hshuan and the Iron Guards did not have a strong body like Yiguchen. After they collided with the blood-red flying swords, the power of Ashura directly penetrated their bodies and rampaged like a fierce beast. Soon, the Iron Guards' faces were flushed, and blood was faintly flowing from the corners of their mouths. Obviously, the condition of their bodies was very bad. How could Yiguchen let go of such an opportunity? He once again used the unique skill of the shadow kill swordsmanship, vanishing shadow. Yiguchen's figure left behind a series of blurry afterimages. The blood-red sword edge played the dirge of death. As the blood-red sword flashed, the Iron Guards covered their throats with their hands, but they could not stop the warm blood from gushing out. In the end, all the Iron Guards were killed, and only Situ Hshuan was left. When Yiguchen's cold eyes looked at Situ Hshuan under the mask, Situ Hshuan couldn't help but feel a chill spread through his body. However, that trace of fear was instantly buried by the hot-bloodedness of youth. Forcefully enduring the Ashura power in his body, Situ Hshuan once again executed a spirit-grade martial art. Clear Cloud Hand Print. Situ Hshuan's vital energy gathered between his palms. Obviously, this was his trump card. As his vital energy surged, it vaguely turned into a cloud seal and blasted towards Yiguchen. Yiguchen sighed in his heart. Situ Hshuan was Situ Hongshua's younger brother. If he could have retreated, Yiguchen would not have pursued him. However, he did not expect Situ Hshuan to be so hot-blooded that he wanted to fight with his life on the line. There's nothing I can do. Yiguchen sighed inwardly. His body was supported by the strength of the dragon and elephant, and the flying guillotine's sword momentum condensed. Shadow kill swordsmanship, vanishing shadow. A scarlet afterimage flashed past Situ Hshuan's neck, and fresh blood dripped from the flying guillotine's blade. With Yiguchen's current strength and cultivation, dealing with a fifth transformation Qi realm martial artist would not take too much effort. Gulp, blood gushed from Situ Hshuan's throat, and his life was slowly fading away. No. Hshuan. Suddenly, a mournful cry that sounded like a cuckoo crying blood pierced through the night sky. A beautiful figure in a bright red wedding dress saw Situ Hshuan's throat slit, and her whole body trembled and tears fell uncontrollably. It was Situ Hongxue who had just escaped from the inner hall. It's you, Bloodthirst Tower's sword demon. Situ Hongshua's beautiful eyes looked at Yiguchen, and an indescribable hatred welled up in her eyes. Situ Hshuan was her younger brother, and they had been very close since they were young. But now, she saw him die on the spot. Situ Hongxue suddenly pulled out Wang Ningmei, and her vital energy gushed out, and she attacked Yiguchen. Sword demon, pay for my younger brother's life. Situ Hongxue attacked with the Four Seasons swordsmanship's ultimate move. Using the swordsmanship that Yiguchen had taught her to kill Yiguchen, it was said that fate made fools of people. Yiguchen sighed inwardly. This was the scene that he didn't want to face the most. He kept the little Ashura sword formation, and executed shadow steps, suddenly retreating. Don't run. Situ Hongshue's eyes were red, and her sword didn't stop moving. Hongxue, come back. Suddenly, Murong Ditian appeared from behind, and he caught up with Situ Hongxue. And you, Murong Ditian, You joined hands to harm my Situ family. You have to die too. Situ Hongshue's face was filled with tears, and she almost lost her voice as she shouted. This was too big of a blow to her. It could be imagined that a proud daughter of heaven who was originally high above had her family destroyed, and her younger brother had died in front of her eyes. Everything was unbearable for her. Murong Ditian attacked Situ Hongshue's nape with his palm, causing her to faint. Bring her out. I still have something to do. Murong Ditian handed the unconscious Situ Hongxue to Murong Ming, and then he took her away. Within the Situ family, the massacre was still ongoing. Fresh blood was like splashed ink, and it dyed every corner of the Situ family's residence red. There were many casualties in the Situ family, but there were also many casualties in the Blood Listening Tower and the Murong family. After all, it was a super family with a strong foundation. It was impossible to not pay a price for completely exterminating it. Yi Guchen's blood guillotine was almost full after the continuous massacre. His figure moved around the pavilion, and his gaze suddenly caught a flash of a figure in front of him. It's him. Yi Guchen raised his eyebrows slightly. The figure he saw was Prince Yuanyi. Around him, there were many guards attacking him. However, Prince Yuanyi's gaze was indifferent. The origin ring on his finger flashed, and a treasured wheel soared into the sky. This treasured wheel was multicolored, and it was like glass. As it revolved, a powerful 5-elemental true qi surged out. That's a high-grade spiritual inscription's divine weapon. Yi Guchen, who was hiding in the dark, couldn't help but sigh. As expected of the imperial crown prince. Just this high-grade spiritual inscription's divine weapon alone could make Prince Yuanyi's strength leap to another level. I'll let you have a taste of the power of the heavenly sacred 5-elemental wheel. Prince Yuanyi poured his true qi into it. On the heavenly sacred 5-elemental wheel, a total of 5 spiritual inscriptions lit up at the same time. They were the 5-elemental spiritual inscriptions. Then, the 5-elemental power suddenly exploded, turning into streams of light. There was the sharpness of metal, the coldness of water, the explosion of fire, and so on. The surrounding guards were instantly drowned in the 5-elemental power, and screams could be heard incessantly. After dealing with the trouble, Prince Yuanyi directly walked into a place. Could that be the Situ family's treasury? Yi Guchen secretly guessed. However, not long after, another figure came again. It was Murong Ditian. There is indeed something fishy, Yi Guchen thought. Whether it was the Murong family or Prince Yuanyi, they had spent so much effort to encircle and annihilate the Situ family because there was something in the Situ family that attracted them. Something that could make them want to get it at all costs was definitely not ordinary. While Yi Guchen was pondering in his heart, an aged and gloomy voice sounded out from the depths of the Situ clan's treasure vault. You actually targeted my Situ clan for the sake of 2 primeval sword tokens. How audacious, boom. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying true qi, which was like a nuclear bomb, spread out in all directions like a huge wave, along with a dense soul energy. That kind of fluctuation was far more powerful than the power of the life and death chamber experts. A heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with surprise. Chapter 79. As a super family, the Situ family's foundation was definitely extraordinary. However, even Yi Guchen did not expect that there would be a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert hidden in the Situ family's treasury. At the same time, the immemorial sword token mentioned by the expert made Yi Guchen's heart skip a beat. It was hard for Yi Guchen not to think of something else. Immemorial sword. Could it be? Yi Guchen had a guess in his heart. If it was as Yi Guchen had guessed, then the immemorial sword token was obviously related to the legendary immemorial sword. In an instant, Yi Guchen's eyes were filled with excitement. For a sword demon who was obsessed with the way of the sword, the immemorial sword had an irresistible attraction. The immemorial sword record had 108 immemorial swords. It was the ultimate dream of all sword cultivators. Yi Guqin was no exception. The door of the Situ family's treasury suddenly opened, and an ordinary-looking old man in a black robe walked out. His eyes were a little turbid, and his face was wrinkled like a ravine. He looked like an ordinary old man past his prime. However, it was obvious that no one would underestimate him. Rumor has it that the Situ family's old ancestor reached the pinnacle of the life and death chamber a few years ago. After that, he had been in seclusion. I didn't expect him to break through to the heaven and earth spirit bridge. Congratulations. Facing an expert like old ancestor Situ, Prince Yuani's expression was still calm. Murong Ditian, who was beside him, was also calm. At that moment, almost all of the powerhouses from the Situ family were engaged in a chaotic battle with the Murong family, the North Star Mansion's chief, and the assassins from the Bloodthirsty Tower. Therefore, only Patriarch Situ was left in the Situ family's treasury. However, the weight of this person was like a stabilizing needle, and it was difficult for others to overstep him. My Situ family has no deep hatred with the royal family or the Murong family. Do you really want to go to such extremes? Although old ancestor Situ's voice was old, it contained a chilling coldness. A man's wealth is his own ruin. Since the Situ family is unwilling to hand over the two Archean sword tokens, they are destined to be enemies with the Imperial family and the Murong family, Prince Yuani said coldly. The secret of the immemorial sword token is not something that you can get your hands on. If the news spreads to the Saint Origin dynasty, I'm afraid the entire South Horizon region will be turned upside down. Old ancestor Situ narrowed his eyes. Are you threatening me? Prince Yuani stopped smiling. Since the two of you aren't willing to drop the matter today, don't blame me for being heartless. Forefather Situ suddenly made his move, and that withered hand that was like a bird's claw grabbed towards Crown Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian. All of a sudden, the surrounding genuine chi surged, and the spiritual chi of heaven and earth gathered. It vaguely formed a cage, trapping the two of them inside. This was the power of a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert. With a raise of his hand, he could cause the heaven and earth spirit chi to resonate and explode with great power. However, in the face of death, Crown Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian didn't do anything. Have you accepted your fate? Or? Ancestor Situ was not a fool. When he saw that the two of them had no reaction at all, his heart skipped a beat. He also sensed that something was wrong. Swish! Just then, an extremely subtle sound of wind breaking, which contained a power that even a heaven and earth spirit bridge expert couldn't ignore, slashed towards Ancestor Situ's back. Ancestor Situ suddenly leaned to the side, gathered his genuine chi, and blasted out a palm. It actually collided with the pitch-black sickle, and exploded with a metallic sound. A black-robed figure suddenly retreated. It was the demon magistrate of the blood-listening tower. The magistrate of the blood-listening tower. Ancestor Situ's old face instantly darkened. The four magistrates of the blood-listening tower were infamous. They were all heaven and earth spirit bridge experts. Even Ancestor Situ didn't expect that in order to completely eradicate the Situ family, Crown Prince Yuani and the Murong family would even invite the magistrate. The price to invite the magistrate of the blood-listening tower was not cheap. Ha, Ancestor Situ, your reputation is out there. How could we not be prepared? Demon Magistrate, we will leave Ancestor Situ to you. Crown Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian looked at each other and smiled. With the demon magistrate entangling Ancestor Situ, they would naturally be able to enter the treasury safely. Let's go. Yi Guqin didn't stay idle. Instead, he used Shadow Step and followed them inside. The treasury of a super-aristocratic family was obviously not that simple. There were also many mechanisms and secret passages inside. However, Crown Prince Yuani was relaxed. The heavenly sacred 5 elements wheel revolved continuously above his head. Waves of 5 elements power burst out, obliterating all the hidden weapons and mechanisms. Yi Guqin, who was hiding in the dark, saw this scene and pondered in his heart, My current identity is the Sword Devil of the Blood Listening Tower. If I fight for the immemorial sword token with them, even if I obtain it, there will be trouble in the future. Why don't I search for other treasures first and wait for them to come out with the immemorial sword token before making a decision? Yiguchen's eyes flickered as he made a decision. His decision was obviously correct. Regardless of whether it was Crown Prince Yuani or Murong Ditian, they weren't interested in the other items in the treasury because these items weren't considered rare in the Murong family and the imperial family. They only had one goal, and that was the immemorial sword token in the deepest part of the treasury. Yiguchen followed another passage into a side room and began to search for the items he needed. Very quickly, Yiguchen found a special secret room. He could vaguely feel a strange fluctuation coming from the secret room. This fluctuation. Yiguchen suddenly stopped in his tracks. He wasn't unfamiliar with this fluctuation because he had also sensed it from the Calamity Dust Sword. This was the fluctuation of a spiritual pattern. If Yiguchen wanted to forge a flexible sword, spiritual patterns were essential. In the Situ family's treasury, there was obviously no lack of such things. Just as Yiguchen opened the secret room, a fist the size of a bowl came out with a loud bang. Yiguchen blocked with his sword in front of him. A majestic force caused Yiguchen to take a few steps back. A figure whose entire body was cyan in color stared at Yiguchen with numb and stiff eyes as he stuttered, "Those who aren't from the Situ family. Kill." Puppet. Yiguchen immediately reacted. However, it was reasonable to place a puppet in this kind of treasury. This puppet's strength was extremely great and was probably able to contend against experts at the peak of chi refining. Unfortunately, Yiguchen also cultivated his physical body and also had the strength of a dragon elephant. In terms of physical strength, he wasn't much weaker than this puppet. Moreover, Yiguchen could use sword arts. A puppet of this level, other than using its fists and legs to attack, had no other methods. Even a super family didn't have the qualifications to have a puppet that could use martial arts. Yiguchen's lips curled into a faint smile. There was no one else here, so Yiguchen could use his methods to his heart's content. With a flip of his hand, the Calamity Dust Sword appeared in his hand again. At that moment, Yiguchen was holding the flying guillotine in his left hand and the Calamity Dust in his right. I haven't used that move for a long time. I wonder if I'm rusty. Yiguchen's lips curled into a smile, and both of his hands attacked at the same time. Chapter 80. Two streaks of sword light, one blood red and the other cold, attacked the puppet at the same time. Clang! The two swords hit the puppet's body, emitting a clear metallic sound. Yiguchen wielded the two swords in a very natural and smooth manner. There was not the slightest bit of hindrance. For a moment, the puppet seemed to be attacked by two sword cultivators at the same time. The sword wounds on its body gradually increased. Yiguchen had never used this move before. Now that he had two swords in his hands, he directly used it. It was the left and right interfighting technique. The left and right interfighting technique was created by the old urchin, a top-notch expert in the pugilistic world. Although the old urchin wasn't one of the top 10 experts, his martial arts had reached the peak. The left and right interfighting technique was learned by the old urchin after the sword demon Dugu Wubai defeated everyone in the world. He was lonely and learned the old urchin's technique. He used the left and right swords to fight with each other to relieve his boredom. However, after practicing the left and right interfighting technique for a long time, Yiguchen's cultivation of the two swords had reached the point of perfection. He had even comprehended an even more powerful move. Dual sword divergence. Yiguchen's essence was fully raised, and he used the two sword moves at the same time. He held the blood guillotine in his left hand and used the Aurora Quick Sword's minor skill, Aurora's Passing. His right hand held the Calamity Dust Sword and used the minor skill, Lightning Flash. The two Xiantian sword moves were used at the same time. A blood-red light intertwined with a dazzling lightning. The two minor skills overlapped each other, and their power multiplied. They directly bombarded the puppet's body. The puppet's body crashed into the wall of the secret room. Its body was torn apart, and its chest caved in. The surroundings were charred black. With the dual sword divergence, Yiguchin defeated the puppet in one move. If other sword cultivators saw this scene, they would be so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. There were sword cultivators who practiced dual swords, but to use two sword moves at the same time, and both were minor skills of the Xiantian sword arts, the difficulty was simply unimaginable. Moreover, a swordsman was right-handed. Using the sword with his left hand would definitely be inflexible. Even if he was left-handed, his right hand would definitely be inflexible, making it difficult for him to execute skillful sword moves. However, Yiguchin had relied on his experience in the left and right interfighting technique to comprehend the dual sword divergence. He was able to separate his left and right hands to execute their respective moves. If Yiguchin were to display two innate stage sword moves at the same time, it would still be acceptable even though the power was strong. Then in the future, when Yiguchin's cultivation level increased, he would be able to use two spirit-level sword moves at the same time, or even more powerful sword moves. At that time, the power of the dual sword divergence would reach a terrifying level. This was a move with unlimited potential. At the same time, it was also Yiguchin's trump card. It could be imagined that if Yiguchin's opponent suddenly discovered that Yiguchin could wield the sword with both hands, and that he was extremely skilled in both, then it would be like fighting against two Yiguchin. Obviously, this would bring a huge surprise to Yiguchin's opponent. After getting rid of the puppet, Yiguchin looked around the entire secret room. There were not many things in the secret room. There was only a stone platform, and on the stone platform, there were many spirit seals. Spirit seals were the carriers of spirit runes. When forging a spirit rune divine weapon, as long as the spirit rune divine weapon was integrated with the spirit rune divine weapon, the spirit rune divine weapon would naturally be engraved on the weapon, displaying its unique ability. Moreover, spirit seals were usually forged by experts above the life and death threshold. The higher the cultivation level, the stronger the spirit seal's attribute would be. There were a total of 5 spirit seals on the stone platform. Yiguchin did not understand these spirit seals, so he simply put them all into his origin ring. After obtaining the spirit seals, Yiguchin only needed one last material to forge the flexible sword. Rare Heaven and Earth Flame. Unfortunately, Yiguchin went to the other rooms of the treasury to search, but he did not find any Rare Heaven and Earth Flame. It seemed that the Situ family's treasury did not have any Rare Heaven flames. Although Rare Heaven and Earth flames were not as rare as the immemorial sword, they were still rare items. Without a certain amount of luck, one might not necessarily find them. Yiguchin did not have much hope. Being able to obtain a spirit seal was already good enough. However, Yiguchin did find a crystal jade secret room. After defeating the puppet guarding the secret room, Yiguchin also obtained a considerable amount of crystal jades. There were a total of 50,000 crystal jades. This was only a small secret room of the Situ family. There should be a large number of crystal jades hidden in other places. However, Yiguchin did not have much time to search. This was because he sensed that there were waves of fluctuations coming from the depths of the treasury. It's the fluctuations of an array. Yiguchin pondered. With the importance of the immemorial sword token, it seemed reasonable that there was an array protecting it. Yiguchin's eyes dimmed. Using the shadow step, he turned into an obscure afterimage and escaped into the depths of the treasury. However, in the depths of the treasury, a circular array exploded with divine radiance. Rays of aura soared into the sky. Although it was only a low-grade mortal-grade array, every ray of aura was enough to kill a third transformation chi refinement expert. Within the array, there were more than 100 rays of aura. They intertwined with each other and whistled. They were extremely powerful. Prince Yuani and Murong Ditien were both trapped in the array. Above Prince Yuani's head, the heavenly sacred five-element wheel revolved continuously. The five spirit patterns emitted a glaring radiance. The power of the five elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth gathered and formed a five-element light shield, enveloping Prince Yuani within. Murong Ditien held the sword wrapped in bandages on his back in his hand. Although he did not untie it, the sword vibrated and exploded with boundless sword chi, scattering the aura in the surroundings. Yi Guqin, who was in the dark, squinted his eyes slightly. No matter if it was Prince Yuani or Murong Ditien, they were both difficult opponents. Murong Ditien's sword, which had never revealed its true appearance, gave Yi Guqin a faint sense of danger. That sword was definitely not ordinary. Even the heavenly sacred five-element will did not give Yi Guqin such a feeling. It seems that Murong Ditien is a strong opponent in the 10 Prefectures Elite Assembly, Yi Guqin thought to himself. Brother Murong, let's not hide anymore. Who knows what other tricks that old man Situ has. Prince Yuani's face was like jade. He was very handsome. Even though he was trapped in the array, he still had a smile on his face. All right. Your Highness, let's attack together and destroy this array. Murong Ditien nodded. Both of them attacked with all their might. Prince Yuani raised his hand slightly, and the heavenly sacred five-element wheel suddenly exploded with a glaring radiance. The mighty power of the five elements gathered on Prince Yuani's arm like rivers returning to the sea. He used a spirit-grade martial art right away. Five elements king subduing fist. Prince Yuani punched out, and the power of the five elements suddenly exploded. It was like 5 mountains, destroying the array patterns on the ground. Murong Ditien attacked at the same time, and he swung his sword down. The surging sword chi seemed to have come from the 9 heavens. What he used was the Murong family's other spirit-level sword art, the Heaven's Exhaustion sword art. Boom! The 2 moves landed at the same time, and the violent vibrations spread in all directions. The entire treasury seemed to be rumbling. Amidst the smoke and dust, rocks flew everywhere. Even though the ground was paved with hard basalt, it was still difficult for it to withstand the extreme moves of the 2. Killing array, destroyed. As the array dissipated, a stone platform was clearly reflected in their eyes. On the stone platform, there were 2 items that were completely black. They looked like tokens, but from their shape, they looked like small black swords. Prince Yuani and Murong Ditien looked at each other, and there was an indescribable look in their eyes. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little strange. Chapter 81. Although Prince Yuani and the Murong family were in a cooperative relationship, they were both wary of each other. Moreover, what they wanted was the immemorial sword token, which was of utmost importance. Although they had an agreement before the plan started, most of the time, wasn't an agreement meant to be broken? Ha, Brother Murong, according to our agreement, the Imperial family and the Murong family will each take one of these 2 immemorial sword tokens. We can study them together in the future and decipher their hidden secrets together. Prince Yuani broke the silence with a faint smile. That's how it should be. Murong Ditien's taut bowstring also relaxed slightly. Although he was confident in his own strength, Prince Yuani was the crown prince of the Saint Origin dynasty. How could he not have some tricks up his sleeve? If the 2 of them were to fight, neither of them would have the upper hand. It was obviously not the right time to fall out with each other. Prince Yuani also thought of this, so he didn't do anything. The 2 of them took 1 immemorial sword token each, smiled at each other, and left the treasury. Yi Guqin followed behind him. In the Situ family, Yi Guqin couldn't make a move because he was afraid that something might happen. If he was discovered, it would be difficult for him to switch between the identities of Yi Guqin and Sword Demon. Outside the Situ family's treasury, it was a mess. The ground was full of cracks, and the surrounding pavilions had collapsed. The demon magistrate and old ancestor Situ were fighting non-stop. It was very difficult to kill an expert of the heaven and earth spiritual bridge level. However, the demon magistrate's mission was only to stall old ancestor Situ, not to kill him. Seeing Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian appear, old ancestor Situ was furious. However, under the demon magistrate's entanglement, he couldn't deal with them. Today, you destroyed my Situ family. I'll make sure you never have peace in the future, old ancestor Situ said with a ferocious expression. If a heaven and earth spiritual bridge level expert targeted him, he would definitely not be able to eat or sleep in peace. However, Prince Yuani shook his head with a smile and said, Old ancestor Situ, the imperial family has many experts. Why would we be afraid of your harassment? If you don't, I'll send the imperial family's experts to kill you. Prince Yuani was like a smiling tiger. Although he was smiling, his words were cold and sharp. Ignorant brat, you will pay the price one day. Patriarch Situ's turbid old eyes were filled with murderous intent, but with the demon judge pestering him, there was nothing he could do. Brother Murong, this matter is over. Let's go. Crown Prince Yuani said. Murong Ditian nodded slightly, and the two of them flew out of the Situ clan. Yi Guqin was still following behind him like a ghost. At this moment, the enormous Situ clan had long since been engulfed in flames, and the sounds of battle resounded incessantly. As a super family, they had a large population and many experts. Naturally, it was impossible to annihilate them in a short period of time. In a manner outside the Situ residence, Murong Ming looked at Situ Hongxue, who had fainted and collapsed on the ground, and swallowed his saliva. He was already a playboy by nature. Now that he saw a beauty like Situ Hongxue, how could he not be envious? However, Situ Hongxue was Murong Ditian's exclusive property. Even if Murong Ming was given 100 guts, he would not dare to do anything to Situ Hongxue. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two whooshing sounds suddenly resounded. Murong Ming's vision blurred, and two figures appeared in front of him. They were Crown Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian. Big brother, you are finally here, Murong Ming said. Murong Ditian nodded slightly. Looking at Situ Hongxue, who had collapsed on the ground, there was a trace of complacency in his eyes. Situ Hongxue, such a fairy-like beauty, had finally landed in his hands. Now, in the Situ clan, other than that old ancestor Situ, there is probably only Situ Hongxue left, Crown Prince Yuani said indifferently with his hands behind his back. Hongshue's life belongs to me. As for the other people in the Situ clan, even if they all die, it has nothing to do with me, Murong Ditian said indifferently. Ha, even heroes have a weakness for beauties, Crown Prince Yuani shook his head and laughed. Clang! Just at this moment, without warning, a sword light pierced towards Murong Ditian at an unimaginable speed, as though it was a remnant shadow that reaped lives. Only when it was 10 feet away from Murong Ditian did Murong Ditian feel goosebumps all over his body. He had never experienced such a feeling before. He hurriedly moved the long sword that was sealed behind him. However, the sword light that was sneak attacking him actually deviated slightly and pierced towards Murong Ditian's left hand. In the origin ring on Murong Ditian's left hand's finger, there was an immemorial sword token. Ah! Murong Ditian let out a miserable cry. A bloody light flashed on his left hand, and a finger flew into the air. That finger with the origin ring was directly absorbed by a figure that soared into the air. Although this series of actions seemed to take a long time, it only happened in a short breath's time. No one would have thought that someone would make a move at this moment. It's you. After seeing the appearance of the person who came, Murong Ditian's eyes instantly turned blood red. That figure, that handsome face. To Murong Ditian, it was a heart demon, a nightmare. Sword Sect's Yi Guqin. If he wanted to make a move against Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian, he obviously couldn't use the identity of Blood Listening Tower's Sword Devil. Therefore, the current Yi Guqin had already removed the Sword Devil's mask and black clothes and returned to his original identity. He had been tailing behind Murong Ditian and the others. Only when he arrived at this manor and saw Situ Hongxue, did Yiguchen make the decision to make a move. The reason why he chose Murong Ditian was because Yiguchen wasn't familiar with Prince Yuani and didn't have much confidence. However, if they were to truly fight, he wasn't afraid at all. Oh, Yiguchen. Is it that sword sect's Yiguchen whose name has spread through the entire Beichen manor recently? Prince Yuani raised his eyebrows and looked at Yiguchen in astonishment. Yiguchen, you are actually here. Murong Ditian clenched his teeth, and his left hand was still bleeding. I was invited by Situ Hongxue to attend the wedding banquet. Yiguchen lied. He naturally couldn't reveal his identity as the Sword Devil. Murong Ditian was stunned. Shortly after, a strong viciousness surged in his eyes. He believed Yiguchen's words because Situ Hongxue had left it behind at the sword-seeking stele. Obviously, she was waiting for Yiguchen. If it was any other man, they wouldn't be able to tolerate their exclusive possession being tainted by others. You've come at the right time. Today, I shall end you. Murong Ditian swung his sword. Although his sword hadn't been unsealed, it still exploded with sword chi. Sword sect's Yiguchen, although I really want to be friends with you, it's a pity that you know the secret of the immemorial sword token. The immemorial sword token isn't something that anyone can taint. Prince Yuani also made a move. The heavenly sacred 5-element wheel flashed and released 5-colored divine light. Facing the pincer attack of the two young experts, Yiguchen's eyes darkened. He knew that it wasn't a good time to fight for a long time. If the experts of the Murong family or the Beichen Manor's chief returned to help, he wouldn't have the chance to escape. Therefore, after making up his mind, Yiguchen decided to use his trump card. Chapter 82. Mysterious devouring power circulated within Yiguchen's body as a powerful suction force suddenly spread out from his body. It was the spirit-devouring secret art he had obtained from the 18-blood prison heaven-devouring beast. This was the first time Yiguchen had used the spirit-devouring secret art in a battle. At this moment, Yiguchen's body was like a bottomless black hole, constantly absorbing the surrounding Ling Qi. The upper limit of the spirit-devouring secret art was the physical body. The stronger the physical body, the more Ling Qi it could absorb. Yiguchen's physical body was definitely stronger than an ordinary person's. Therefore, when he used the spirit-devouring secret art, the amplification he received was even stronger. Secret art? Even Prince Yuani's expression changed slightly when he felt Yiguchen's aura erupting like a geyser. The royal family did not lack secret arts that could temporarily increase one's strength, but those secret arts had a limited amplification. It was impossible for them to increase one's strength as much as Yiguchen's. Attack! Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian looked at each other with tacit understanding. Gung metal sword chi. Prince Yuani pointed with his sword. The metal spirit runes engraved on the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel suddenly erupted with dazzling golden light. A beam of golden sword chi shot out from the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel and blasted towards Yiguchen. Murong Ditian, on the other hand, immediately used his ultimate move. He brandished his sword, and 8 streaks of sword chi shot towards Yiguchen as if they could split the heavens and split the earth. Each streak of sword chi was enough to casually kill an ordinary chi refinement realm martial artist. It was the little ultimate move of the mysterious heaven sword art, Sword Sweep 8 Desolation. Facing the attacks of 2 young experts at the same time, even the Heaven Prides on the Heaven Prides list would find it difficult to withstand. However, Yiguchen smiled casually. He felt the power in his body that had nowhere to go, but he was not afraid at all. With the amplification of the spirit-devouring secret art, Yiguchen's current strength was no weaker than any 7th Revolution Chi refinement cultivator. The soul-devouring secret skill had almost raised Yiguchen's cultivation by a whole realm. Of course, this was also because Yiguchen's current cultivation was only in the essential Qi realm. If he were in the Qi refining realm, the effect would not be so obvious. Yiguchen's tribulation dust sword edge cleansed, and a majestic true Qi spread out like a tide. Behind him, an illusory sea appeared. Above the sea, a bright moon rose into the sky, bringing with it unparalleled sword chi. The ultimate move of the piercing moon swordsmanship, see rising bright moon. Yi Guqin, who was enveloped by the bright moon of sword chi, collided with the attacks of the two people. Boundless sword chi spread out in all directions. The ground of the manor split open, the surrounding walls collapsed, and the rockery crumbled. Murong Ming was so scared that he hastily dragged Situ Hongxue away. Such strength! Prince Yuanyi's usually calm expression changed completely. Although he had long heard of Yi Guqin's achievements from the sword sect, hearing about it was one thing, and personally fighting with him was another. Looking at the bright moon of sword chi that seemed invulnerable, Prince Yuanyi felt that the name of the sword sect was indeed true. After exchanging blows, Yi Guqin was actually not at a disadvantage against the two of them. Damn it, how did his strength increase so much? Your Highness, we only need to delay him. Murong Ditian's expression became even more unsightly. Yi Guqin had already become his inner demon. Only by personally removing this thorn in his flesh could his path of the sword be smooth. But now, Murong Ditian actually felt that Yi Guqin's strength was not inferior to his at all. Kill! Murong Ditian raised his sword high. Although it was not unsealed, the sword chi still spread out. Great splashing wind sword, wind god's howl. Accompanied by Murong Ditian's shout, thousands of sword chi soared into the sky like a gale. Then, they all gathered together, as if they were the center of a tornado. Although the great splashing wind sword was only the Murong family's Xiantian sword technique, this move was a great killing move. In other words, Murong Ditian had already cultivated the great splashing wind sword to the great accomplishment stage. I also have a great accomplishment stage sword technique. The calamity dust in Yi Guqin's hand shook, and then suddenly swept out. It was extremely dazzling. Aurora Quick Sword's great killing move, Dawn Break. A sword shadow that was like the light of the sky tore apart the darkness. Boom! The two great killing moves collided, and an extremely strong vibration force spread out like a wave, causing the void to shake. Heavenly Fire Seal. Just as Yi Guqin and Murong Ditian's swords collided, Crown Prince Yuanyi made his move once again. On the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel, the fire spirit patterns lit up. The entire 5-element wheel instantly shone with a fiery light, and waves of blazing fire energy gathered in Crown Prince Yuanyi's palm. He struck out with his palm, and the power of fire condensed into a heavenly fire seal, pressing towards Yi Guqin's back. Yi Guqin executed the Willow Catkin wind movement technique and raised his sword, forcing Murong Ditian to retreat. Then, he changed his sword art again, and the sword cut through the void like the trajectory of the Great Thousand World, making it hard to grasp. Then, these sword trajectories overlapped, forming a sword wheel. Great Thousand Wheel. Yi Guqin's sword landed, and the Great Thousand Wheel that overlapped with each other blasted towards Prince Yuanyi. Small accomplishment stage spirit sword technique. The corner of Prince Yuanyi's eyes twitched, and he quickly changed his move. 5 Elements King Subduing Fist. On the heavenly sacred 5 Elements wheel, the 5 spiritual patterns emitted a blinding divine light at the same time, and then the power of the 5 elements was added to Prince Yuanyi's hand. He punched out, and 5-colored divine light shone, colliding with the Great Thousand Wheel. Humph! Even with Prince Yuanyi's strength, he grunted, and a few cracks appeared on the hand he used to punch, and blood flowed out. Yi Guqin knew that he couldn't delay any longer. He gathered all the power in his body, and hundreds of green sword chi scuttled out of his body like fish. Every green sword chi carried an extremely sharp aura. They were the heaven-splitting sword souls that Yi Guqin had obtained from Yi Tianqing's heavenly path sword realm. Originally, with Yi Guqin's current cultivation, he could only release over 100 heaven-splitting sword souls at the same time. However, after executing the spirit-devouring secret technique, Yi Guqin could now release 300 heaven-splitting sword souls. 300 heaven-splitting sword souls. Although they didn't have the power to destroy the sky like they did in the Heavenly Path Sword Realm, they were still extremely terrifying. Everywhere they passed, the fake mountains and pavilions collapsed, turning into countless pieces. What kind of technique is this? Prince Yuani and Murong Ditian were a little surprised. The hundreds of sword chi were like living creatures. They flew around the void, and split into two, and attacked Murong Ditian and Prince Yuani respectively. No matter how strong they were, they couldn't withstand the continuous attacks of hundreds of sword chi, let alone the fact that the heaven-splitting sword souls could enter their bodies and cause damage. Murong Ditian and Prince Yuani were both hit. The heaven-splitting sword souls were rampaging in their bodies, and even with their vital chi, they couldn't suppress them. Soon, the two of them coughed up blood. Yi Guqin saw the opportunity and moved his feet. Like the wind, he rushed towards Murong Ming, who was hiding in the distance. Seeing Yi Guqin rushing over, Murong Ming was scared out of his wits. He had a conflict with Yi Guqin before. At this moment, how could he care about Situ Hongxue? He ran away as if he was running for his life. Seeing this, Yi Guqin didn't chase after him. Instead, he grabbed Situ Hongshue's delicate body and suddenly left. Leave Hongxue behind. Murong Ditian's expression changed drastically, and he almost couldn't help but release the seal on the sword in his hand. However, when he thought of the price he had to pay, he held it in for the time being. He only clenched his teeth, and blood seeped out from his lips. After Yi Guqin's figure gradually disappeared into the distance, the sky-splitting sword soul in their bodies also rushed out and disappeared into the void. Yi Guqin, there will be a day when I will kill you. From afar, Yi Guqin heard Murong Ditian's furious roar, and a cold smile appeared on his face. Chapter 83. Taking away Situ Hongxue and obtaining Murong Ditian's immemorial sword token at the same time. Yi Guqin also felt that if he were in Murong Ditian's shoes, he would also be infuriated. However, with Murong Ditian's narrow-mindedness, they were destined to be on opposite sides with no room for reconciliation. Since that was the case, what couldn't they do? Moreover, the immemorial sword token contained a huge secret that was similarly attractive to Yi Guqin. He naturally wouldn't miss out on it. After a bloody night, the next day, the entire firmament city was filled with the thick smell of blood. It was impossible for the outside world not to know about the huge commotion within the Situ family. However, with such a huge commotion, no one had the time to investigate. If they were to poke their nose into other people's business, they might be implicated and end up smashing their own feet. The final result was that the huge Situ family, with thousands of people, other than ancestor Situ who was injured and fled, no one survived. Corpses piled up into mountains and blood flowed like rivers, dyeing the surrounding land dark red. However, Blood Listening Tower and Murong family also paid a price. Blood Listening Tower lost a golden masked assassin and 4 silver masked assassins. That was 1 life and death threshold expert and 4 divine soul experts. Close to half of the 50 iron masked assassins also died. The Murong family had also lost a few of their elders, and many of their disciples were either dead or injured. Even Beichen Mansion's mansion master suffered heavy injuries and immediately went into seclusion to recuperate after the encirclement ended. From this, it could be seen that the price to completely exterminate a super family was definitely not light. In a room on the 2nd floor of an inn near the most remote part of Firmament City, Situ Hongxue quietly lay on the bed. Although her eyes were closed, her brows were tightly knitted. Beads of sweat appeared on her snow-white skin as she muttered something. Father. Mother. Little brother. Situ Hongxue suddenly lost her voice. Her jade-like hand suddenly stretched out and tightly grabbed Yi Guqin's arm. Yi Guqin frowned slightly and didn't say anything. Situ Hongxue suddenly opened her beautiful eyes. Tears were flowing in her pitch-black eyes. Yi Guqin. Situ Hongxue was puzzled for a moment. She didn't seem to understand why Yiguchen was here. Then, she suddenly thought of something and grabbed Yiguchen's arm tightly. "Young Master Yi, how is my family's situation?" Father, mother, and little Situ Hongxue was suddenly speechless. In her memory, that nightmarish scene appeared again. The assassin with the blood-red mask was like the Grim Reaper. With a slash of his sword, blood spurted out from Situ Heshuan's neck. "It's him, the sword demon of Bloodlust Tower. He killed my little brother." Situ Hongshue's eyes were filled with deep resentment. Yiguchen clenched his fists slightly before releasing them. His gaze shifted to the side. Did he regret it? Yiguchen asked himself, but unfortunately, he didn't. He only felt a little helpless about killing Situ Heshuan, but he didn't regret it. He was the sword demon. In order to complete the mission and obtain the Azura sword will, he was willing to pay any price. But at this moment, Situ Hongshue's teary eyes made him hesitate. Had he gone too far because of his obsession with the sword Dao? But in the next moment, Yiguchen immediately rejected this idea. His pursuit of the sword Dao had always been his top priority. Otherwise, he wouldn't have joined an assassin organization like Bloodlust Tower. What happened to my father, mother, and the entire Situ family? Situ Hongxue was particularly fragile at this moment. Her eyes were red and she clutched Yiguchen's sleeve tightly. Apart from you and the injured ancestor Situ, no one in the entire Situ family survived. Yiguchen sighed and finally told the truth. Situ Hongxue shuddered and sparkling tears fell uncontrollably. "Dead, they're all dead. Father, mother, little brother, it's all because of them. Prince Yuani, Chief Beichen, the Murong family, and Bloodlust Tower." Situ Hongxue lowered her head and clenched her jade-like hands so tightly that her knuckles turned white. It was easy to imagine that the high and mighty Situ family's beloved daughter, who was the center of attention, had lost everything in just one night. It was hard for anyone to accept such a fall from heaven to hell, let alone Situ Hongxue, who was only a woman in her 20s. Yiguchen didn't know what to say when he saw this. He wanted to comfort her, but he felt that it would be too hypocritical of him to comfort her after he killed her little brother with his own hands. Suddenly, Yiguchen felt an aura emanating from Situ Hongshue's body. That aura was filled with darkness, negativity, hatred, and resentment. Yiguchen raised his eyebrows. It reminded him of the rumor of being possessed by a demon in the pugilistic world from his previous life. When a person's heart was filled with all kinds of negative emotions, they would have no regrets even if they were possessed by a demon in order to achieve their goal of revenge. "Yiguchen, please teach me swordsmanship. I can only take revenge if I become stronger." Situ Hongxue suddenly raised her head. Yiguchen looked over and his heart trembled slightly. He saw that there were tears of blood flowing from the corners of Situ Hongshue's eyes. Her tears were like fresh blood as they meandered down her smooth and tender face. Even so, Yiguchen closed his eyes and opened them again. He said calmly, "My current cultivation is not as high as yours. How can I be your master? I don't care. As long as you can teach me swordsmanship and give me the right to take revenge." Situ Hongshue's tone was bone-piercing. Yiguchen hardened his heart and shook his head with a sigh. Afterwards, no matter if it was Yiguchen reporting back to Blood Listening Tower, entering the 18-blood prison, or entering the ice-fire broken cliff to break through his cultivation, these were all secrets that could not be leaked. Bringing along Situ Hongxue, it was obviously inconvenient for him to move around. Moreover, what Yiguchen said was indeed true. Although he could teach Situ Hongxue in the way of the sword, in terms of cultivation, he really could not teach her at all. And it was not only swordsmanship that measured a person's strength. Seeing Yiguchen reject like this, Situ Hongshue's originally pale face became even more bloodless. Her lips, which were as white as paper, trembled slightly. After a long time, Situ Hongxue wiped away her tears of blood and revealed a thin smile. She said, "No matter what, I still have to thank young Master Yi for saving me from Murong Ditian's hands. I will definitely repay you in the future. Situ Hongxue stood up and was about to leave. Where are you going next? Yi Guqin sighed and asked. To any place that can make me stronger. There will be a day when I will kill all of them. Situ Hongxue tightly clenched her jade-like hands, her fingernails slightly piercing into her palms as blood dripped down from the gaps between her fingers. All of them naturally included Blood Listening Tower's sword demon. If my identity is leaked in the future, could it be that I will also have to have a life and death battle with Situ Hongxue? Yi Guqin could not help but think in his heart. After Situ Hongxue left, Yi Guqin was somewhat absent-minded. This was what it meant to be played by fate. But in an instant, Yi Guqin calmed down. After all, he was the sword demon who had once ruled the world with his sword. How could he be affected by such emotions? He adjusted his state of mind and took out the origin ring on Murong Ditian's severed finger. What made Yi Guqin slightly disappointed was that there was nothing in the origin ring other than the immemorial sword token. It was very obvious that Murong Ditian's origin ring was only used to store the immemorial sword token. Let me see what's so special about this immemorial sword token. Yi Guqin took out the immemorial sword token. The entire sword token was pitch black and deep. It was unknown what material it was made of, but there was a vague strange beast engraved on its surface. This strange beast is... Yi Guqin frowned as he vaguely felt that it was somewhat familiar. Suddenly, Yi Guqin was stunned as he felt that the devouring power in his body was slightly stirred. Devouring power. Could this strange beast be the immemorial Taotai? Yi Guqin was really surprised. Could there really be such a coincidence? When he was refining the heaven-devouring beast's demonic pill in the 18-blood prison, he had faintly seen a vague illusion. A vague figure killed the immemorial Taotai, forged the immemorial famous sword, and imparted the heaven-devouring secret technique. Thinking of this, even with Yi Guqin's composure, he could not help but breathe rapidly. Could it really be related to the immemorial famous sword? Chapter 84. When Yi Guqin first heard about the immemorial sword token, although he guessed that it might be related to the immemorial sword, he wasn't very sure. This was because the immemorial sword was too rare. It was a divine weapon that could shake heaven and earth. If it were to appear, it would definitely stir up an endless storm. All the super dynasties, mysterious ancient sects, ancient sacred grounds, and so on would definitely take action. This was because as long as one could obtain an immemorial sword, they would be able to suppress 10,000 years of luck and become an invincible sword expert. However, because it was too rare, Yi Guqin wasn't sure if the immemorial sword token was real or fake. After all, it was too unbelievable to find traces of an immemorial sword in a small place like the Saint Origin dynasty. However, based on the memory that Yi Guqin extracted from the sky-devouring beast's monster core, this immemorial sword token was definitely related to the demon sword that was made from the immemorial Taotai. Vaguely, Yi Guqin felt as if he had uncovered a corner of the immemorial sword. Although I didn't know much about it before, I heard that the immemorial sword token was obtained in the everlasting flatland. Yi Guqin thought to himself. The everlasting flatland was an infinitely vast territory within the Saint Origin dynasty. The North River Sword King Chu Donglio's Sword King's secret realm was first discovered in the everlasting flatland. However, the Sword King's secret realm was only at the periphery of the everlasting flatland. There were endless dangers in the everlasting flatland, but there were also many secret realms, treasure grounds, and caves. No one could explain why there were so many secret realms in the everlasting flatland. Could it be because of the immemorial sword that so many experts died in the everlasting flatland? Yi Guqin guessed. This might be a possibility. However, he didn't know enough and didn't have the ability to search for it. He had only obtained one immemorial sword token. The imperial family and Prince Yuanyi had a total of 2. Although the Murong family's token was obtained by Yiguchen, there was still another one in the family. Yiguchen didn't know if there were any other immemorial sword tokens. Therefore, even if Yiguchen had some clues now, it was impossible for him to search for the famed primordial sword. However, Yiguchen believed that when the time came, the famed ancient sword would not be willing to remain silent. Right now, the only thing Yiguchen needed to do was to raise his own strength. Strength was the only way to go. Otherwise, even if he obtained the ancient famed sword, he wouldn't have the ability to control and refine it. Yiguchen temporarily put the matter of the immemorial sword token to the bottom of his heart and sorted out what he had to do next. Next, I'll have to report back to Bloodhark Tower. The flying guillotine has been filled, but before that, I need to make a breakthrough. Yiguchen pondered his next steps. After the battle with the Situ family, Yiguchen's flying guillotine had finally absorbed enough blood essence, reaching the requirements to enter the 18-blood prison. However, the 18-blood prison was extremely dangerous. In order to be confident, Yiguchen still needed to enter the Cloud Valley mountain range and use the ice fire Yin Yang Tan to completely overcome the blood tribulation of the physical body and achieve a perfect physical body. Then, he would break through to the Qi refinement realm. If he entered the Qi refinement realm, Yiguchen's chances of entering the 18-blood prison would be even greater. The 10 prefectures elite gathering was also not far away. In order to deal with Xia Yubing's sword intent, Yiguchen also needed to obtain the inheritance of the Azura sword intent. Cloud Valley Mountain Range, Ice Fire Cliff. After completing his mission, Yiguchen also directly returned to this place. To others, the Ice Fire Cliff was a land of death, but to Yiguchen, it was an absolute land of treasures. Yiguchen had a premonition that if he succeeded this time, his strength would rapidly increase. At that time, in the 10 prefectures elite gathering, even Xia Yubing who had obtained the inheritance of the North River Sword King would be trampled under his feet. At the entrance of the cliff, the power of raging flames and extreme cold continuously emitted, causing half of the surrounding mountain rocks to be charred black, and the other half covered in ice and snow. Yiguchen did not hesitate in the slightest, directly jumping in. Under the ice fire cliff, the ice fire Yin Yang Tan was like a Tai Chi diagram at the bottom. The power of ice and fire were clearly separated, mutually restraining each other, yet coexisting in harmony. At the beginning, Yiguchen did not pay much attention to it, but now, it seemed that how this ice fire Yin Yang Tan was formed was a mystery. There must be a reason for this kind of secret realm of heaven and earth to be formed. But there was no special geographical environment around the ice fire cliff. Could it be that there is something at the bottom of this ice fire Yin Yang Tan? Yiguchen could not help but ponder. But for now, he still prioritized cultivation. Previously, when Yiguchen passed the second minor tribulation of the blood tribulation of the physical body, he only sat cross-legged near the edge of the ice fire Yin Yang Tan. But now, Yiguchen hesitated slightly, and then directly jumped into the eye of the ice fire Yin Yang Tan. This was almost the place where the power of ice and fire gathered the most, and it was also the spring of the entire ice fire Yin Yang Tan. As soon as Yiguchen entered the eye of the Tan, he instantly felt an extremely strong power of ice and fire rushing into his body in an instant, wantonly destroying his physical body like an evil dragon. Almost in an instant, Yiguchen's face flushed red, and he spat out a big mouthful of blood. The impact of such a strong power of ice and fire was still too fierce for his current cultivation of the 9th level of the Essence Origin realm. Even if he had cultivated the muscle tendon changing scripture and marrow cleansing scripture, even if he had the Vajra celestial body, and even if he had a strong recovery power, Yiguchen's physical body almost instantly burst open with a large number of bloody wounds. Streaks of blood appeared on Yiguchen's skin. At this moment, Yiguchen was like a puppet on the verge of breaking. This was because the power was too strong and too destructive. Even with Yiguchen's cold temperament, he could not bear such inhumane pain, and directly let out a painful groan. Sword vein. Come out. Yiguchen gritted his teeth, and blood seeped out of his lips. In his body, 360 golden sword veins shone with golden divine light, trying to stabilize Yiguchen's body that was on the verge of breaking. However, even with the perfect sword vein, it was still unable to stop the surging power of ice and fire. The golden sword vein seemed to have dimmed under the impact of the power of ice and fire. Heaven-splitting sword soul, come out! Yiguchen roared with a hoarse voice. In his body, the 3,000 heaven-splitting sword souls appeared again, trying to resist the power of ice and fire. With the double suppression of the golden sword vein and heaven-splitting sword souls, the power of ice and fire was slightly weakened, but that was all. At this moment, Yiguchen was bathed in blood, and his skin was sometimes charred black, and sometimes covered with ice and snow. If it were any other qi refining grandmaster, even if he was at the peak of the qi refining realm, he would definitely die if he fell into the ice and fire yin-yang tan-I. However, Yiguchen relied on his physical body and various trump cards. Coupled with his inhuman strong will, he was able to withstand the attack. Yiguchen silently operated the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, and with the help of the terrifying power of ice and fire, he wanted to pass through the blood tribulation of his physical body. Chapter 85. This was simply a huge torture. The pain of crossing the blood tribulation of the physical body plus the pain of being attacked by the power of ice and fire. Anyone else would find it unbearable and their will would collapse. But Yiguchen would not. He was the sword demon, the Dugu Wubai who once dominated the world. If the Dugu Wubai's will could not bear it, then no one could. As time passed, even the pain seemed to have become numb. Yiguchen only felt that his physical body did not belong to him. His body was broken and his body was in a mess because of the power of various attributes. If not for the muscle tendon changing scripture and marrow cleansing scripture, Yiguchen's physical body would have collapsed long ago. However, in this continuous destruction, there was also new life. Yiguchen gradually discovered that his physical body seemed to show signs of recovery under the circulation of a mysterious power. This was the power of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. The 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra allowed one to pass through 9 tribulations to become a god. Each tribulation was extremely painful, but as long as one could pass through it, the benefits would be endless. Yiguchen would reach the pinnacle of this realm in every realm. This was also the reason why Yiguchen had to pass through the blood tribulation of the physical body before breaking through. He wanted to break through in the most perfect state. Yiguchen sat cross-legged like an old monk in meditation. The blood flowing all over his body had already coagulated. At this moment, his physical body had been destroyed to the extreme by the power of ice and fire, but still maintained a little vitality. At the same time, the mysterious sword of thunder tribulation that had been silent in Yiguchen's dantian began to tremble slightly. A part of the vigorous power of ice and fire was also absorbed by the sword of thunder tribulation. This state lasted for a full 5 days. On the 5th day, Yiguchen almost stopped breathing. The last bit of vitality was like a candle in the wind. Then, his vitality faded away. Did I fail? Yiguchen thought in his consciousness. He was unwilling. He did not believe that there was no difficulty that could stop him from rising. Stepping over the peak, surpassing the supreme, no longer what he had hoped for in his life. He did not ask to live as long as heaven and earth, but to witness the peak of the sword Tao. How can I stop here? Boom! Within Yiguchen's dantian, the thunder calamity sword exploded with extreme lightning. Streaks of lightning power flowed along Yiguchen's almost withered body. The power of tribulation lightning was the power of destruction, but it was also the power of life. In the midst of death, nirvana contained new life. At this moment, Yiguchen suddenly opened his eyes. Rumble. Like an ancient dragon awakening, Yiguchen stood up and roared at the sky. The scabs all over his body fell off, revealing his flawless jade-like physique. Yiguchen had never had this kind of feeling before. His entire body was one with the heaven and earth, and he could operate his profound chi without any hindrance. When he casually made a move, it was very harmonious. This feeling was as if Yiguchen's body was flawless, like a perfect porcelain, completely unbreakable. Now, Yiguchen felt that it was time for a breakthrough. He took out the energy-gathering pill, which was given to him by his aunt, Xian Su, when he broke through to the qi-refining realm. Originally, with Yiguchen's current state, he could have broken through to the qi-refining realm without any obstacles without the help of the energy-gathering pill. However, after taking the energy-gathering pill, Yiguchen's cultivation realm increased even more rapidly. Crack! Finally, at a certain moment, Yiguchen's profound qi gathered in his dantian. Endless profound qi gathered at one point. Then, with a crack, as if a barrier had been broken, a wisp of genuine qi emerged and quickly spread into the sea of qi. The so-called breakthrough from the profound qi to the qi-refining realm was the process of gathering all the profound qi in the body in the dantian and building the sea of qi. Only with the sea of qi could one be considered a qi-refining realm martial artist. Moreover, the sea of qi also had differences in strength. When an ordinary martial artist broke through to the qi-refining realm, his sea of qi would be about 10 feet wide. Of course, the so-called 10 feet wide referred to the sea of qi. The bigger the sea of qi, the more genuine qi it could store. As one's realm increased, the sea of qi would also expand. As for the gods' favored ones, they would generally have a sea of qi that was at least 10 feet wide after breaking through. However, Yiguchen's sea of qi expanded to 30 feet the moment he broke through and showed no signs of stopping. First cycle of qi-refining realm. Second cycle of qi-refining realm. Third cycle of qi-refining realm. Yiguchen's cultivation realm increased like a geyser. This was not because he was lucky or because he had some halo. It was because Yiguchen had been accumulating for too long. With his strength, he could have broken through long ago. However, in order to cultivate a perfect body, he suppressed it. This was the so-called good preparation. With the help of the energy-gathering pill, Yiguchen had such a shocking breakthrough. In the end, Yiguchen's cultivation realm stopped at the 5th cycle of qi-refining realm. Breaking through 5 minor levels in a row. If this news were to spread, it would definitely stun a group of so-called gods' favored ones. Yiguchen's sea of qi had also expanded to an astonishing 100 feet wide. 100 feet of sea of qi. This meant that Yiguchen's true qi far exceeded that of ordinary gods' favored ones. Even if it was a group battle, as long as Yiguchen could persevere, his sea of qi would not dry up. Is this the increase brought about by a perfect body? Yiguchen now had an accurate understanding of the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra. It was definitely a cultivation technique that defied the natural order. After cultivating a perfect body, Yiguchen believed that the benefits were definitely not just limited to the sea of qi. In the future, on the road of cultivation, he would be able to cultivate to perfection in any realm and gain the upper hand. The foundation was deep, and the building was tall. Yiguchen's perfect body had undoubtedly laid the best foundation for his cultivation. His entire body, whether it was qi, blood, true qi, recovery ability, or toughness, had all far surpassed before. He clenched his fist and endless true qi surged, as if it contained enough power to split the earth and overturn the sky. What made Yiguchen even happier was that his marrow cleansing sutra had naturally reached the small success stage. Yiguchen knew that this was because the marrow cleansing sutra was to cleanse the bone marrow and 5 internal organs. When he had just passed the blood tribulation, his entire body had almost been reconstructed, so the breakthrough of the marrow cleansing sutra was natural. Now that the marrow cleansing sutra has been cultivated to the small success stage, if I cultivate it to the large success stage, I will be able to cultivate the indestructible body of Vajra. Coupled with the perfect body, how strong will my body be? I'm afraid that I can resist a divine spiritual inscription weapon, right? Yiguchen's eyes were surging with excitement. His body was now able to resist an ordinary spiritual weapon barehanded. If he really cultivated the indestructible body of Vajra, coupled with the perfect body, it was not a delusion to resist a divine spiritual inscription weapon barehanded. Yi Guqin was looking forward to the arrival of that moment. This was the benefit of the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra. The Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra had a total of 9 tribulations. After the blood tribulation of the body, Yi Guqin naturally began to prepare for the next tribulation. The second tribulation of the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra was called the Sea of Qi Spirit Tribulation. Chapter 86. If the blood tribulation of the physical body targeted the physique to create a perfect body, then the Sea of Qi spiritual tribulation targeted the Sea of Qi. Like the blood tribulation of the physical body, the Sea of Qi spiritual tribulation also included 3 minor tribulations. After the first minor tribulation, one would cultivate a golden Sea of Qi. After the second minor tribulation, one would have a golden Sea of Qi. After the third minor tribulation, one would have a limitless Sea of Qi. Limitless Sea of Qi. Even though Yi Guqin already had some understanding of the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra, he was still deeply shocked. Just the golden Sea of Qi had already amazed Yi Guqin. The quality of the golden genuine Qi in the golden Sea of Qi was far superior to ordinary genuine Qi. If the same move was performed with golden genuine Qi, the power would be far superior to ordinary genuine Qi. Yi Guqin estimated that if he cultivated a golden Sea of Qi, the power of all his moves would increase by at least 30%. This was already an extremely terrifying means of amplification. Moreover, there was also the limitless Sea of Qi, which meant that Yi Guqin had almost endless genuine Qi. Although his Sea of Qi was already 100 feet, if he continued to release it, there would be a moment when it would dry up. However, if he cultivated a limitless Sea of Qi, then his genuine Qi would almost never dry up. Although the benefits of going through the Sea of Qi spiritual tribulation were indescribable, the conditions for going through the tribulation were not easy to achieve. To go through the first minor tribulation, one had to find a special fire of heaven and earth to light up the Sea of Qi. Using a special fire of heaven and earth to light up the Sea of Qi. If it did not come from the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra, Yi Guqin would have suspected that it came from some suicidal evil technique. The importance of the Sea of Qi to a warrior was self-evident, and the first step to cultivating the golden Sea of Qi was to light up the Sea of Qi. In the eyes of an ordinary warrior, this was no different from the Sea of Qi. The last 2 tribulations were even more demanding. One had to find an extremely spiritual object or a blessed place. At the same time, in addition to the special fire of heaven and earth, one also needed a special thunder of heaven and earth to open up the Sea of Qi. The so-called special thunder of heaven and earth was the power of thunder of the same level as the special fire of heaven and earth. It seems that it's not that simple to go through the Sea of Qi spiritual tribulation. Yi Guqin shook his head and sighed. If one wanted to obtain strength, they had to pay an equivalent price. Although Yi Guqin had cultivated a perfect mortal body, the pain of experiencing the blood tribulation of his mortal body was not something that an ordinary person could withstand. Yi Guqin slowly shook his head. Then, he suddenly froze. In his dantian, in addition to his Qi Si, there was also the Thunder Tribulation Sword. At this moment, the Thunder Tribulation Sword was still humming and trembling as it continued to absorb the power of ice and fire. Could it be? Yi Guqin thought for a moment, and suddenly remembered that some vague words had appeared on the Thunder Tribulation Sword when he was cultivating in the ice-fire yin-yang tan. It was just that the power of ice and fire absorbed at that time was not enough, so it was difficult to manifest. However, now that he had a perfect body and had broken through to the Qi refinement realm, Yi Guqin was no longer as fearful of the power of ice and fire as before. I'd like to see what other secrets this Thunder Tribulation Sword has. Yi Guqin's eyes lit up. Just the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra alone had benefited Yi Guqin a lot. He was more and more interested in the words that appeared on the sword. Soul-devouring secret skill. Yiguchen activated the devouring power in his body and performed the soul-devouring secret skill. He was not performing it to improve his cultivation, but to increase his efforts to absorb the power of ice and fire in the ice-fire yin-yang tan. Rumble. Yiguchen's mortal body seemed to have formed a bottomless black hole. The endless heaven and earth spiritual qi, including the power of ice and fire in the ice-fire yin-yang tan, flowed into Yiguchen's body and was absorbed by the thunder tribulation sword in his dantian. Yiguchen felt that his whole body was alternating between burning and cold, but it was much better than before. Although he had felt a little pain for a long time, he was no longer as embarrassed as before. Yiguchen sat cross-legged, and the water level of the ice and fire yin-yang tan began to drop. In fact, there was no water in the entire ice and fire yin-yang tan, but it was formed by the convergence of the ice and fire yin-yang tan. Time gradually passed, and in the end, the power of ice and fire in the entire ice-fire yin-yang tan was almost completely absorbed by the thunder tribulation sword. At the bottom of the dry pool, there were countless crimson and dark blue crystals. The power of ice and fire on these crystals was also gradually absorbed. Finally, at a certain moment, the thunder tribulation sword finally stopped absorbing the power of ice and fire, and the originally vague words on the sword gradually became clear. Yiguchen closed his eyes and looked inside himself, reading all the words on the sword. Finally, Yiguchen opened his eyes, his chest rose and fell, and it was difficult to hide his shock. The mystery of the thunder tribulation sword was self-evident. Any cultivation method or scripture that appeared on it was a supreme cultivation method. What was recorded in this chapter was not a cultivation method like the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, but a swordsmanship. The name of the swordsmanship was 10,000 God Tribulation. Like the 9 Tribulations Heart Sutra, it was a supreme cultivation method that could not be classified and measured by levels. However, with Yiguchen's vision, he could see that the 10,000 God Tribulation sword technique was not complete, and only the first move was revealed. The first move of the 10,000 God Tribulation, destruction of heaven and earth. It was a supreme swordsmanship that gathered all the vital energy in one's body at one point and suddenly exploded, destroying the void and destroying heaven and earth with one's power. Although it was not the complete 10,000 God Tribulation sword technique, just the first move alone made Yiguchen very surprised. He could not imagine who created the 10,000 God Tribulation. Such a swordsmanship was simply a creation of heaven and earth. Even with sword demon Dugu Wubai's vision, he felt that the 10,000 God Tribulation was a supreme swordsmanship. Although only the first move was revealed, it was enough for Yiguchen. With his current strength, it was still uncertain whether he could perform this move. In the following time, Yiguchen sat cross-legged and meditated, beginning to comprehend the 10,000 God Tribulation. With Yiguchen's talent as sword demon and the seed of the sword heart, it took him a full 7 days to comprehend it before he made some progress. At a certain moment, Yiguchen suddenly opened his eyes, and vital energy gathered all over his body. The surrounding void seemed to be gathering momentum. He suddenly pulled out the Calamity Dust sword, holding it vertically in front of his chest with both hands. With a roar, the vigorous vital energy in his body suddenly surged out in an overwhelming manner. It went along Yiguchen's back and suddenly exploded, then condensed into a pair of sword wings. If one looked closely, they would realize that the sword wings, which were 20 feet wide, were condensed from pure sword energy. Just the first move of the 10,000 God Tribulation could already form sword energy. Ha! Yiguchen raised the Calamity Dust sword high, and the sword wings on his back flapped, and endless sword energy soared into the sky. Yiguchen tried his best to concentrate all the power of the sword wings on the tip of the Calamity Dust sword. But, even with Yiguchen's perfect body, it was difficult for him to withstand this mighty force, and the surface of his skin began to crack open. In an instant, the vital energy in Yiguchen's body suddenly went berserk, and Yiguchen spat out a smear of vermilion red, and the Calamity Dust sword quickly slashed down. Boom! The sword wings exploded with endless sword energy, and an unparalleled and domineering sword energy suddenly burst out from the bottom of the ice and fire yin yang tan. There was an ear-piercing shriek in the void, and then the earth and mountains shook. Rocks flew through the air, and the endless sword energy caused the entire ice and fire cliff to collapse. Yiguchen was hit by the force of the shock and fell directly. There was actually another mystery at the bottom of the ice and fire yin yang tan. Chapter 87. Yiguchen slowly opened his eyes. What he saw was a grotesque and variegated light. Crimson and dark blue crystals dotted the underground karst cave. He moved his body. Even with the strength of his perfect body, it was difficult to withstand the pressure of the 10,000 god tribulation. This was what it meant to kill 1,000 enemies and lose 800 of your own men. It is indeed a supreme sword technique. Yiguchen smiled bitterly. He had not released the complete first move of the 10,000 god tribulation just now. Condensing the sword wings was just the basics. The most important thing was to condense the infinite sword chi into one point. But with Yiguchen's current cultivation, he could not fully display this sword technique. At the same time, Yiguchen was shocked to find that nearly 90% of the genuine chi in his body had been drained in an instant. Logically speaking, with Yiguchen's horrifying ocean of chi, there was almost no sign of it drying up. However, he had only displayed an incomplete version of the 10,000 deities tribulation, and his ocean of chi had almost dried up. It seems that in the future, unless it is a matter of life and death, I can't use the 10,000 god tribulation. Otherwise, after one move, if I can't kill the enemy, I can only be at the mercy of others. Yiguchen secretly shook his head. He even suspected that the 10,000 god tribulation was a sword technique that matched the 9 tribulations Heart Sutra. Perhaps only the 100,000 feet sea of chi could support the consumption of the 10,000 god tribulation's genuine chi. Yiguchen thought to himself. Even with the recovery ability of his perfect fleshly body, it still took him a full day to recover. Only then did the wounds on his body gradually heal. His true energy also gradually recovered. At this time, Yiguchen began to look around the underground karst cave. The appearance of the ice and fire yin yang tan was not accidental. Yiguchen had suspected it before, but now, he felt that there seemed to be a faint and powerful pressure spreading from the depths of the karst cave. That pressure was not only the pressure of the breath, but also the pressure of the soul. What is in there? Yiguchen frowned, faintly feeling that he seemed to have found something extraordinary. He gradually swept into the depths of the underground karst cave. The deeper he went, the stronger the power of ice and fire around him. If not for the fact that Yiguchen had already gotten used to the power of ice and fire when he broke through to the perfect body stage, it would have been very difficult for him to enter. The deeper they went, the more Yiguchen discovered that the number of crystals in the surroundings increased. The crimson crystals and the dark blue crystals complemented each other, decorating the underground cave with a myriad of colors. Suddenly, Yiguchen stopped and looked around. There were several dark and deep tunnels in the underground cave. He was in the main cave. Yiguchen sensed a dangerous aura. However, when he looked in front of him, he found that there were flames in front of him. The crimson flames were mixed with dark blue flames, like a waterfall of fire. It was very mysterious and strange. Inside the waterfall of fire, many crimson crystals and dark blue crystals were piled up together. In the center, a cluster of flames was slowly rising. That flame was extremely strange. Its outer flame was crimson red, but its core was a deep blue flame. Yiguchen was stunned for a moment as he felt the extreme temperature coming from the cluster of flames. Soon after, his eyes lit up. That's the rare fire of heaven and earth. It was really a case of searching high and low for something, only to find it by chance. If he wanted to forge a soft sword, the last thing he lacked was the rare fire of heaven and earth. Now, It was placed in front of him. Although this rare fire of heaven and earth exuded a blazing power, at the same time, there was also an extremely cold power spreading out. Cold and hot, ice and fire. The two completely opposite forces were perfectly combined by this rare fire of heaven and earth. Although he did not know the name of this rare fire of heaven and earth, it was definitely extraordinary. Sure enough, the formation of the ice and fire yin-yang tan is not accidental. It turns out that it is related to this rare fire of heaven and earth. Yiguchen's eyes were clear as he was about to collect the fire. Suddenly, a cold breath, like frost and flying snow, gushed toward Yiguchen. Feeling the bone-chilling coldness behind him, Yiguchen moved and used the willow catkin wind body technique to dodge the breath. He looked back and was instantly stunned. He saw a lizard-like monstrous beast scurrying out from another karst cave. This lizard-like monstrous beast was 30 feet long. Its limbs were thick, and its pitch-black claws were as sharp as hooks. It had two heads, one dark blue and the other crimson red. It was covered from head to toe with a crystal armor like ice and fire. Feeling the pressure from this lizard-like monstrous beast, Yiguchen could not help but be secretly shocked. 4th rank monstrous beast. A 3rd rank monstrous beast was already difficult for an ordinary warrior in the Qi refining realm to contend with. As for a 4th rank monstrous beast, it almost had the power to contend with a human divine soul realm warrior. A monstrous beast of this level was not in existence that a warrior in the Qi refining realm could contend with. However, Yiguchen was not an ordinary warrior in the Qi refining realm. He had many trump cards. When he was in the essence realm, he could already contend with a god's favored son in the Qi refining realm. Now that he had broken through to the Qi refining realm not long ago, Yiguchen wanted to test the extent of his strength. And this 4th rank monstrous beast, the ice and fire dragon lizard, was the best test of his strength. Come! Yiguchen did not have the slightest fear. Instead, his eyes were filled with fighting spirit. As if it felt the provocation of the human in front of it, the two heads of the ice and fire dragon lizard roared. Its body moved and attacked Yiguchen. Yiguchen flipped his hand and unsheathed the calamity dust sword. The vigorous true Qi of the 5th revolution of the Qi refining realm was poured into the sword. The entire calamity dust sword instantly burst out with a dazzling sword light. 42 vessel meridians were all lit up, increasing the power of the sword light. Feeling the powerful true Qi that he had mastered, Yiguchen also gained confidence. True Qi was more powerful than essence Qi. Kill! Yiguchen struck out with his sword. On the calamity dust sword, the broken edge spirit inscription shone brightly. An extremely sharp armor-piercing power was emitted from the tip of the sword. Aurora quick sword, Aurora's passing. A streak of sword light, with a penetrating power, fiercely hit the head of the ice and fire dragon lizard. However, upon contact, Yiguchen felt as if the tip of the sword had stabbed into an iron wall. It only pierced an inch. Compared to the huge head of the ice and fire dragon lizard, this inch was probably not enough to break its crystal armor. As expected of a 4th rank monstrous beast. Yiguchen sighed inwardly. The other head of the ice and fire dragon lizard opened its mouth and spat out a breath of ice. Yiguchen used the willow catkin wind movement technique to dodge. The ice and fire dragon lizard raised its pitch-black claws and attacked. Yiguchen blocked with his sword. In an instant, a huge force came. Yiguchen's body directly smashed into the side of the karst cave like a cannonball, creating a human-shaped pit. Crystal shards flew everywhere. What a powerful force! Yiguchen's chest heaved up and down, calming the turbulent qi and blood in his body. Fortunately, he had a perfect body and could recover quickly. However, the ice and fire dragon lizard would not give him much time. Its two ferocious heads opened their mouths. A breath of ice and a breath of fire swept out at the same time. They intertwined in the air, forming a spectacular breath of ice and fire. Seeing the ice and fire dragon lizard's attack coming, Yiguchen formed a seal with one hand. Luo Tian protection. Chapter 88. As his voice fell, Yiguchen's powerful genuine chi burst out and condensed around him like clouds and mist. Immediately, it turned into a guardian Vajra's shadow. It was different from the cloud-like shadow that Yiguchen had displayed before. The guardian Vajra's shadow this time was still somewhat illusory, but it was much more solid and translucent than before. This was a spiritual staged defensive martial art. Even if Yiguchen had broken through to the 5th turn of Qi refinement realm, he could not fully display the defensive power of the protection of highest heaven. Even so, the current protection of highest heaven's defensive power was much stronger than before. Boom! The breath of ice and fire fell on the guardian Vajra's shadow. Yiguchen's body shook and he was pushed back again. Kill! Taking advantage of this moment, Yiguchen held the calamity dust and displayed his unique sword skill. He knew that with the strength of a rank 4 monster, ordinary sword moves were useless against it. Shadow-killing swordsmanship, vanishing shadow in an instant. Yiguchen's sword momentum gathered and his body suddenly flashed out, leaving behind an afterimage. He slashed out with his sword. The sword edge shook the void and made a buzzing sound. Clang! The sword hit the fire head, but the ice head on the other side opened its huge mouth. Its crisscrossing fangs were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. As long as one was bitten, one's body would be torn apart. Yiguchen's eyes were clear. He flipped his other hand and the blood-red flying guillotine flashed out. Vacuum sword wave, stacking waves. Yiguchen held the flying guillotine in his other hand and displayed the vacuum sword wave's unique skill at the same time. Almost in an instant, 20 layers of transparent sword waves spread out, resonating with the vibration of the void. The vibration power ignored the defense and instantly penetrated the ice-fire dragon lizard's crystal armor and hurt its internal organs. Unlike Yiguchen, the ice-fire dragon lizard did not cultivate the marrow cleansing sutra, which allowed it to cultivate its internal organs. Although its outer crystal armor was extremely hard, its internal organs were soft and fragile. This vacuum sword wave is indeed useful. Previously, some people in the Beichen mansion discussed that this sword technique originated from the Limitless Sword Sect's Spirit Tier sword technique, the Void Sword technique. If I have the chance, I must obtain this Spirit Tier sword technique, Yiguchen thought to himself as he repelled the ice-fire dragon lizard with a single strike. The dragon lizard of ice and fire was a little dizzy from the injury, and some blood flowed out of its mouth. However, the physique of a rank 4 monster beast was not something that could be killed by a vacuum sword wave. If one sword isn't enough, then two. Yiguchen held the flying guillotine in his left hand and the calamity dust in his right. He wielded two swords at the same time. Once again, he displayed his ultimate swordsmanship, dual sword divergence. The calamity dust in his left hand vibrated, and the tip of the sword drew a full moon. Behind him, sword chi soared into the sky, turning into a dark ocean. A bright moon of sword chi rose. With the flying guillotine in his right hand, he once again displayed the vacuum sword wave's ultimate move, overlapping waves. In an instant, the void vibrated, and the sword wave overlapped. The two swords were displayed at the same time, and their power shook the heavens. The entire underground cave rumbled. If it were not for the many crystals embedded in the rock to reinforce the cave, the entire cave would have collapsed. Roar! The ice-fire dragon lizard instinctively sensed a trace of danger. Its crystal armor burst into light, and its defense was clearly at its limit. Then, it opened its mouth and spat out a breath of ice and fire. Rumble! Sword chi overflowed, and the power of ice and fire surged. Yiguchen used the sea-rising bright moon to manifest a bright moon of sword chi, breaking the ice-fire dragon lizard's breath of ice and fire. The flying guillotine carried 20 layers of sword wave and bombarded the ice-fire dragon lizard's head. Roar! An extremely trembling roar came out. The ice-fire dragon lizard's head roared wildly, and blood spurted out of its 7 orifices. This strike had actually shattered the insides of the raging flame skull, causing the skull and brain matter to mix together like tofu. After letting out a roar, the ice-fire dragon lizard's head fell directly to the ground. But then, the other ice head collided with it. Its pair of beast eyes were blood-red, and it was obviously enraged. Boom! The head covered in thick crystal armor heavily bombarded Yiguchen. The sword chi around him had long been worn out by the ice-fire dragon lizard's breath of ice and fire. Yiguchen's body crashed to the ground, and gravel flew everywhere. He spat out a mouthful of red blood, and it was obvious that he had suffered serious injuries. The ice-fire dragon lizard, which only had one ice head left, had entered the berserk stage. The power of ice and fire surged all over its body, and its sharp claws pressed down on Yiguchen like hooks. Yiguchen blocked with his 2 swords. He felt like he was being crushed by a primordial fierce beast, and the bones in his body cracked. He was sure that if he didn't have the perfect body and the Vajra Dharma body, he would have been crushed into a bloody pulp. Soul-devouring secret skill. Yiguchen activated a wisp of devouring power in his body. Suddenly, the surrounding spiritual chi, as well as the power of ice and fire, rushed into his body crazily. Yiguchen's strength almost exploded in an instant. 6th cycle of chi refining. 7th cycle of chi refining. 8th cycle of chi refining. It was not until Yiguchen reached the 9th cycle of chi refining that his aura calmed down slightly. The Divine Soul Realm was a threshold. Even with the power of the soul-devouring secret skill, Yiguchen could not break through the barrier of the Divine Soul Realm at the 5th cycle of chi refining. But even so, it was enough. Feeling that his body was filled with genuine chi almost instantly, Yiguchen's eyes were as dazzling as the sword light. Sky-splitting sword soul, come out. The cyan sword soul surged out of Yiguchen's body like a dragon returning to the sea. Its impact shook the dragon lizard of ice and fire away. Yiguchen put away the flying guillotine with one hand, and then pointed between his eyebrows to control his genuine chi and the sky-splitting sword soul. With the help of the soul-devouring secret skill, Yiguchen's cultivation had reached the 9th cycle of chi refining. At this level, he could barely control 3,000 sword souls. If he wanted to control them perfectly, he had to break through the Divine Soul Realm. Kill! Yiguchen pointed between his eyebrows. The 3,000 sky-splitting sword souls seemed to have their own consciousness. They followed Yiguchen's finger and attacked the dragon lizard of ice and fire. It was conceivable that 3,000 sword souls would cover the sky and earth, like a giant sword chi dragon, cutting the air. Even the dragon lizard of ice and fire, who had gone mad, could not help but show a trace of fear in its eyes when it saw the sword pressure. Then, it turned around and tried to escape. Rumble. However, the dragon lizard of ice and fire was still not as fast as the sky-splitting sword souls. The 3,000 sword souls bombarded the dragon lizard of ice and fire. Although the crystal armor on the surface of the dragon lizard of ice and fire was strong, under the repeated attacks of the 3,000 sword souls, it could not withstand the bombardment and suddenly broke into pieces. The sky-splitting sword souls entered the dragon lizard of ice and fire through the broken wounds. They were like sharp blades, crisscrossing each other. The bones, muscles, and internal organs were all severely injured under the impact of the cyan sword souls. Looking at the dragon lizard of ice and fire, which was howling in pain, Yiguchen could not help but shake his head and sigh. The unique skill of the sword sect of the 8th generation sword master, Yi Tianqing, was so terrifying. The 3,000 sky-splitting sword souls alone were enough to severely injure the rank 4 demonic beast to the brink of death, as if its body was being dismembered. If one day, Yiguchen could absorb all the 108,000 sword souls, the power would be enough to wipe out an aristocratic family or sect with a flip of his hand. Yiguchen's heart was filled with yearning as he imagined that he would be able to do whatever he wanted. I'll end you with one move. Chapter 89. As soon as Yiguchen finished speaking, he raised the Jia Chen sword and activated the Broken Edge Spiritual Tattoo and the Thunderstorm Spiritual Tattoo at the same time. In an instant, the sharp light on the Jia Chen sword flickered with extremely destructive dazzling lightning. The unique skill of the Boundless Heaven Sword Art, Boundless Wheel. The crisscrossing sword edges were like the trajectory of the heavens. Then, they overlapped and turned into the Boundless Wheel, which flashed with lightning, and blasted toward the ice head of the dragon lizard of ice and fire. Boom! Lightning splashed and ice crystal fragments flew everywhere. The dragon lizard of ice and fire let out a roar that shook the sky. However, the roar was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Finally, the movement of the dragon lizard of ice and fire became slower and slower. Then, the ice head fell to the ground powerlessly. A deep cut directly broke its crystal armor, and even the brain was vaguely visible. The Boundless Heaven Sword Art was a superb spiritual level sword art, so the power of its unique skill should not be underestimated. In addition, Yiguchen had performed the soul-devouring secret skill and the Jiachen sword spiritual tattoo, so that he could kill the dragon lizard of ice and fire. It was not until the dragon lizard of ice and fire fell to the ground that Yiguchen relaxed. He withdrew the soul-devouring secret skill, and his aura fell back to the fifth turn of the chi-refining realm. At the same time, Yiguchen felt weak and collapsed to the ground. Although the soul-devouring secret skill was a trump card, its side effects were also very obvious. This was because Yiguchen had a chi-C of 100 feet. If it were an ordinary chi-C of 100 feet, he would have fainted directly after performing the soul-devouring secret skill. This made Yiguchen shake his head with a wry smile. Although the side effects of the soul-devouring secret skill were not as terrible as the 10,000 deities tribulation, he could not use it casually. But no matter what, Yiguchen looked at the huge body of the dragon lizard of ice and fire on the ground and sighed in his heart. Once upon a time, when he was fighting for the dragon blood transforming fruit, a rank 3 golden-eyed horned dragon python made him feel suffocated. But now, he could even kill a rank 4 demonic beast. It had to be said that this kind of increase in strength was indeed an indescribable pleasure. Yiguchen was certain that even among the heaven's favorites, there were only a few who could fight against a 4th-rank demonic beast. As for those who could kill it like him, it could be said that they were as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns. However, Yiguchen was not complacent. Although he was improving, the others might not necessarily be stagnant. For example, his nemesis Xia Yubing, who had obtained the North River Sword King's inheritance, her cultivation speed was definitely not slower than his. Adding on the fact that she possessed a rare sword intent, she was definitely his #1 opponent in the 10 Prefectures elite gathering. The others couldn't be underestimated either. For example, Murong Ditian. That sword of his had never been unsealed, yet it gave Yiguchen an extremely dangerous feeling. For example, Prince Yuani had an upper-grade spiritual weapon and the heavenly sacred 5-element wheel. He was definitely a strong opponent. Looks like I have to hurry up. After obtaining this heaven and earth unique flame, I will have the capital to forge a flexible sword and comprehend the Heartsoft sword intent. If I can also obtain the Azura sword intent, with the addition of 2 sword intents, I won't fear anyone. Yiguchen's eyes were clear and filled with confidence. With a perfect physical body and a 300-meter chi-C, Yiguchen's injuries recovered by more than half in half a day. He looked at the corpse of the ice-fire dragon lizard. The entire body of a 4th-rank demonic beast was filled with treasures. Although Yiguchen had plundered 50,000 crystal jades from the Situ family's treasury, no one would complain about having too many crystal jades. Yiguchen's origin ring couldn't store living things, but it was still able to store dead things. The entire corpse of the ice-fire dragon lizard was stored into Yiguchen's origin ring. Yiguchen suddenly had a flash of inspiration. He thought of the powerful defensive power of the crystal armor on the surface of the ice-fire dragon lizard's body. If the crystal armor was refined into an armor, its defensive power would definitely be extraordinary. However, this was just an idea. The difficulty of refining an armor-type spirit tool was far greater than other spirit tools. It was because of this that defensive spirit tools were so rare. However, Yiguchin thought that with the old drunkard's forging skills, refining an armor-type spirit tool should be a piece of cake. Putting this thought to the bottom of his heart, Yiguchin walked to the side of the heaven and earth unique flame. If it were an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't be able to get within 10 meters of it. However, Yiguchin was different. His perfect physical body originally relied on the power of ice and fire to break through, so to a certain extent, he was already partially immune to the temperature of the flame. Looking at this dual-colored flame, Yiguchin couldn't help but shake his head. It was indeed a heaven and earth unique item. Every heaven and earth unique flame had a different attribute. For example, this heaven and earth unique flame was the coexistence of extreme heat and extreme cold. It was very strange. Let's take it back first. Yiguchin didn't plan to refine it directly. He didn't know much about refining fire seeds and forging. It was best to ask the old drunkard before making a decision. Yiguchin collected a lot of ice and fire crystals. These ice and fire crystals were all derived from heaven and earth unique flames, so they didn't melt or repel. Using many ice and fire crystals to wrap the heaven and earth flame, it was like a piece of amber, sealing the flame inside. After putting the heaven and earth unique flame into his origin ring, Yiguchin also looked for a way out. Although the ice and fire cliff had collapsed, there were other caves in this underground karst cave. The dragon lizard of ice and fire had obviously come in from another cave. Soon, Yiguchin found a way out and returned to the outside of the cliff. He looked back and saw that the ice and fire chi rising from the ice and fire cliff had become a rift valley with layers of broken stones. There was nothing special about it anymore. Next, I'll return to the Milky Way Prefecture's Merchant River City and find the old drunkard to discuss the sword forging method. Yiguchin's figure instantly floated away. This time, Yiguchin's strength had increased greatly. If he could obtain the flexible sword and comprehend two sword intents, then Yiguchin was confident that he wouldn't fear any prodigy in the 10 prefectures elite gathering. Merchant River City, as the bustling place of the Milky Way Prefecture, was just like before. People came and went, and there was an endless stream of horses and carriages. Yiguchin returned to Merchant River City, and naturally went to find the old drunkard. However, along the way, he heard some interesting rumors. TSK, the battle for the head of the prodigies 2 days ago was really too exciting. I really didn't know that Xia Yubing was actually so strong. Some cultivators were discussing. Yeah, it really opened my eyes. Xia Yubing actually fought 1 against 5, and even defeated them. Song Daozhen, Bei Dangue, Wang Chen, Zhou Han, and Chu Shiqing are all part of the 7 prodigies, but they were all defeated by Xia Yubing. Her strength is just too terrifying. Now, Xia Yubing can be considered as the #1 prodigy in the Milky Way Prefecture. I'm afraid that even the previous generation's #1 prodigy, Yiguchin, didn't have such a battle record, right? No, I heard that Yiguchin made a name for himself in the Beichen Prefecture, defeating 5 prodigies together, this Xia Yubing. Yiguchin sat in a tea house, frowning slightly as he listened to the cultivators beside him talk. These 5 prodigies obviously didn't have much weight in Yiguchin's eyes now. However, if the 5 of them were to fight together and use their trump cards, even Yiguchin couldn't guarantee that he would be able to defeat them all. However, Xia Yubing had done it. Putting aside whether or not the 5 prodigies were holding back, there was no need to doubt Xia Yubing's strength. Moreover, Yiguchin was sure that Xia Yubing wouldn't reveal all her trump cards before facing him. Chapter 90. Looks like the inheritance of the North River Sword King really can't be underestimated. After all, he's an expert that crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth, Yiguchin thought to himself as he sipped his tea. After meeting Ancestor Situ and the demon judge, Yiguchin had a preliminary understanding of the experts at the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. The North River Sword King was an expert that crossed the spiritual bridge of heaven and earth. His strength was unquestionable, and the inheritance he left behind was definitely not simple. Only by relying on that inheritance could Xia Yubing's strength improve so much. Originally, Yiguchin thought that Xia Yubing was just a little troublesome, but now it seemed that he had underestimated this black-bellied and ice-cold childhood sweetheart. However, Yiguchin didn't plan to fight for the title of number 1 Heaven's Pride in the Sky River Province, nor would he fight with Xia Yubing now. Xia Yubing wasn't his only enemy. Waiter, the bill. Yiguchin stood up and smiled. Only strength could prove everything. The title of number 1 Heaven's Pride was nothing but empty words. Yiguchin walked through all the taverns in Merchant River City, and finally found the old drunkard huddled in the corner of a small tavern. The old drunkard's addiction to alcohol was acting up again, but he had no money to drink. His old face was wrinkled like a chrysanthemum. Seeing Yiguchin, the old drunkard's turbid eyes suddenly lit up. Without saying anything, he pulled Yiguchin's sleeve and ran into the tavern. In the side room of the tavern, cups of wine were scattered all over the place, and the room was filled with the strong smell of alcohol. The old drunkard burped, and his old face was as red as an apple, revealing a satisfied expression. Seeing this, Yiguchin didn't hesitate and took out the mysterious silver heavy water, spirit seal, and heavenly flame. The old drunkard glanced over, revealing a slightly surprised expression. "Senior, I've gathered all the materials to forge the flexible sword," Yiguchin said. "What a lucky kid. You managed to find everything." The old drunkard clicked his tongue and looked around. "Well, these 5 spiritual tattoos are the Phantom Spiritual Tattoo, Lightness Spiritual Tattoo, Chi-Gathering Spiritual Tattoo, Sturdy Spiritual Tattoo, and Self-Healing Spiritual Tattoo. Although they are not very advanced spiritual tattoos, they are just passable," old drunkard commented. Yiguchin's eyes twitched when he saw that the spiritual runes collected by a super-aristocratic family were barely enough in the eyes of the old drunkard. This is... Old drunkard was surprised when he saw the heavenly fire sealed in the ice fire crystal. "Senior, may I know what kind of heaven and earth rare flame this is?" Yiguchin was also curious about the origin of this heaven and earth rare flame. "Heavenly Sun Dark Fire." "Good lad." Even among the rare flames in the world, this kind of fire seed can be considered top-notch. "You actually managed to find such a fire seed." Old drunkard was speechless. "Heavenly Sun Dark Fire." Yiguchin was confused. This Heavenly Sun Dark Fire not only contains the power of extreme yang, but also the power of extreme cold. It alternates between yin and yang, and the transformation of cold and heat. Not only is it very suitable for forging weapons, but it is also a major killing move against enemies. Old drunkard stared at Yiguchin, obviously wondering how Yiguchin could have such good luck. Yiguchin's eyes flashed when he heard this. "I can give this fire to you, senior. I hope you can help me forge a flexible sword." Old drunkard was not surprised at Yiguchin's words, but his expression did not change at all. He said, "I have already said that I have no intention of helping you forge a flexible sword." Yiguchin sighed slightly. He knew that it was too naive to bribe old drunkard to forge a flexible sword with just a few bottles of wine. "Then senior can continue to drink here. I will find another way." Yiguchin cupped his hands and was about to leave. "Wait." Old drunkard said slowly. Yiguchin stopped in his tracks and looked at old drunkard. "Although I don't want to forge a flexible sword, haven't you thought of forging a flexible sword yourself?" Old drunkard asked. Yiguchin's eyes lit up. He also wanted to forge a flexible sword that belonged to him, but he could not find a way. Although he had interacted with Chu Shiqing before, it was only a superficial understanding. I want to forge a flexible sword that belongs to me, but I also know that my ability is limited. A spiritual inscription divine weapon is not something that I can forge right now. Yi Guqin knew himself well. He might be able to forge an ordinary spiritual weapon after learning a bit. However, not everyone could forge a spiritual inscription divine weapon. At the very least, one had to be a 4-star forging master to forge it. He had never come into contact with forging, so how could he forge a spiritual inscription divine weapon? Old Drunkard laughed when he heard Yi Guqin's words. Little Yi, do you know the immemorial famous sword records? Of course, Yi Guqin said sternly. Let's not talk about the heaven ranking of the immemorial famous sword records for now. The famous swords on the earth ranking are all forged by humans. Although some of the famous swords were forged by divine craftsmen, most of the famous swords were the swords of the ancient sword emperors. They did not specialize in forging, but they could still nurture the famous swords of the ancient sword emperors, Old Drunkard said meaningfully. Senior, you mean? Yi Guqin suddenly understood. That's right. For a sword cultivator, forging other weapons might not be advantageous at all. However, when it comes to forging swords, some sword cultivators are even more suitable than forging masters. This is because they are the sword users and have a better chance of nurturing a peerless famous sword. Old Drunkard's words enlightened Yi Guqin. Yi Guqin's mind suddenly became clear. It doesn't matter if you can't forge a spiritual inscription divine weapon for now. You can forge the sword embryo of a flexible sword. As for the spiritual inscriptions, I can help you inscribe them, Old Drunkard said. Yi Guqin already knew that Old Drunkard had the intention of teaching him the art of forging. I will never forget Senior's kindness in teaching me the art of forging. Yi Guqin sincerely cupped his hands at Old Drunkard. In fact, he had long intended to forge a famous sword that belonged to him. This was because only a famous sword that he forged himself would be most compatible with him. Yi Guqin even had ambitions. Since the famous swords nurtured by the ancient sword emperors could enter the earth ranking of the immemorial famous sword records, then in the future, when his cultivation reached the peak step by step, why couldn't he nurture a famous sword that belonged to him? At the thought of this, Yi Guqin felt a sense of pride in his heart. If the famous sword that he forged and nurtured entered the immemorial famous sword records, how bold would that be? Not only did Yi Guqin himself want to reach the peak of the sword Dao, but his sword also wanted to reach the peak of the famous sword. Of course, this was just a thought. If Yi Guqin were to say such words now, it would undoubtedly be a joke. Yi Guqin hid this thought deep in his heart. He believed that there would be a day when this would not be a dream. Alright, Yi brat. 3 days later, outside Shanghe City, we will meet at Tongtian Mountain. Old Drunkard waved his hand and continued drinking. Yi Guqin nodded and left. He wanted to go outside Shanghe City to cultivate in the bamboo forest and wait for 3 days before heading to Tongtian Mountain. But when Yi Guqin was about to reach the gates of Shanghe City, a figure with his back facing him blocked his path. Looking at the slender figure in black, Yi Guqin raised his eyebrows. Song Daozhen. Chapter 91. Song Daozhen was a prodigy of the Song clan, one of the 5 great families of the Milky Way Prefecture. When Yi Guqin was still the leader of the 7 prodigies of the Milky Way Prefecture, Song Daozhen had always been ranked second. Later, when Yi Guqin's prodigy Halo fell and Xia Yubing followed closely behind, Song Daozhen still couldn't beat her and was ranked second. Therefore, some busybodies in the Milky Way Prefecture called Song Daozhen the Eternal Second. This wasn't because Song Daozhen wasn't strong, but because Yi Guqin and Xia Yubing were too strong. Yi Guqin, you've actually returned. The slender figure turned around, revealing a handsome face with a faint scholarly aura. It was Song Daozhen. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. His impression of Song Daojun was quite good. At least after the incident in the Sword King mystic realm, Bei Dangue and the others had used unscrupulous means against him. However, Song Daojun did not become resentful because he was ranked second for many years and did not do anything to hit Yi Guqin when he was down. Among the 7 prodigies of the Milky Way prefecture, apart from Chu Shiqing, Song Daojun was probably the only one who had a good relationship with him. Since you're here, you should have heard about how the 5 of us were defeated by Xia Yubing. Song Daojun couldn't help but smile wryly at this point. Have you really done your best? Yi Guqin's eyes were filled with confusion. Song Daojun shook his head and said, although the 5 of us didn't use our trump cards, Xia Yubing didn't use her full strength. The North River Sword King's inheritance isn't that simple. Yi Guqin nodded slightly. In fact, he sympathized with Song Daojun. Song Daojun wasn't weak among the 7 prodigies of the Milky Way prefecture. At least, he was stronger than Bei Dangue. Unfortunately, Xia Yubing had obtained the Sword King's inheritance. Even he had to be careful, let alone Song Daojun. So, what business do you have here? Yi Guqin asked. Fight with me. Song Daojun's origin ring flashed and the azure edge sword was unsheathed. At the same time, a chi comparable to the 7th transformation chi refinement realm spread out. Looks like during this period of time, Song Daojun hasn't been standing still. As soon as this aura spread out, it immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding people. In addition, their position was at the edge of the Shang River City's gate. People were coming and going, which naturally attracted a lot of attention. Isn't that Song Daojun? He's actually using his sword against someone. Who is that? That's the sword sect Yi Guqin. He actually returned to the Milky Way prefecture. I've heard that this Yi Guqin caused quite a commotion in the Beichen Manor. Looks like he has been reborn from the ashes. That may not be the case. It depends on whether or not he can contend against Song Daojun. After all, seeing is believing. Soon, a group of people gathered around. There were peddlers and many martial artists. The soldiers guarding the city gates were also unable to stop them. After all, one of them was a genius from one of the 5 great clans, the Song clan. Seeing more and more people gather around, Yi Guqin's eyes flickered. He looked at Song Daojun and said, Did Xia Yubing send you to fight me? Heh. Am I that kind of person in Brother Ye's eyes? I admit that I'm not as strong as Xia Yubing, but so what? I can't defeat her now, but that doesn't mean I won't be able to defeat her in the future. Song Daojun tightened his grip on the azure edge sword. My apologies, it was a slip of the tongue. Since you want to fight, then come. Yi Guqin unsheathed his calamity dust sword and the aura of the 5th transformation chi refinement realm spread out. Yeah, the 5th transformation chi refinement realm. Let alone Xia Yubing, even Song Daojun's cultivation is higher than his, a martial artist said disdainfully. Xia Yubing is already at the 8th transformation chi refinement realm. She's one of the best in the 10 prefectures. This rumor about Yi Guqin in the Beichen prefecture, I'm afraid it's not true. When Yi Guqin's aura spread out, it attracted a wave of questioning and discussion. After all, in terms of cultivation, Yi Guqin was still a bit lacking. However, Song Daojun did not underestimate him in the slightest. The azure edge sword in his hand vibrated endlessly. Brother Song, use your strongest sword move. Yi Guqin smiled calmly. He did not want to waste too much time here, and at the same time, he did not want to reveal too many of his techniques. Song Daojun thought so as well. He naturally couldn't reveal his greatest trump card, but he could still reveal his strongest move, which was second only to his trump card. Clear Wind Sword Art, Death of Wind. Song Daojun swung his sword. His sword chi stirred up a true gale. The powerful sword chi condensed into a line in an instant. A flash of azure light was as fast as the wind, tearing through the air and whistling towards Yi Guqin. It's the Song family's Xiantian sword art, and it's been cultivated to the realm of great accomplishment. Some warriors exclaimed in shock, their eyes filled with disbelief. It was extremely difficult to cultivate a Xiantian sword art to the realm of great accomplishment. Those who could do this were the true prodigies of the sword principle. Even Yi Guqin couldn't help but exclaim in admiration when he saw the sword. As expected of the prodigy who firmly occupied the second place, this sword art was already amazing. However, it was still not enough. A true prodigy of the sword principle would at least be able to comprehend a spirit-level sword art to the realm of small accomplishment. Although Song Daozhen also had a spirit-level sword art, he did not use it. Yi Guqin held the calamity dust, the sword edge vibrating. The scattered sword qi rippled in the void, as if forming an illusory sea. Above the sea, a bright moon quietly rose. The ultimate move of the piercing moon sword art, bright moon rising from the sea. Sword qi. It's the manifestation of sword qi. Among the crowd, there was no lack of sword cultivators who practiced the sword. When they saw the bright moon of sword qi, they screamed in horror. This was the realm of the sword principle that sword cultivators dreamed of. Boom! The two moves intersected, and a violent wave of air surged and spread. The surrounding crowd was knocked back, and some even fell to the ground and vomited blood. After the smoke and dust dispersed, Yi Guqin held the calamity dust in his hand. His eyes were clear, and there was not a speck of dust on him. On the other hand, although Song Daozhen was not too embarrassed, he was knocked back. Blood dripped from the fingers of the hand that held the emerald-edged sword. Yi Guqin, you've really risen again. I didn't expect that I still can't beat you. Song Daozhen smiled with a touch of self-mockery in his eyes. He put away the emerald-edged sword, retracted his injured hand into his sleeve, and turned to leave. Brother Song, I have something to say to you. Seeing Song Daozhen's lonely back, Yi Guqin suddenly spoke. Song Daozhen stopped in his tracks. Don't forget your sword heart. That's all I have to say. Goodbye. Yi Guqin saluted and turned to walk toward the city gate. But before he left, he glanced at the shop on the second floor. Two figures quickly flashed by. Don't forget your sword heart. Let go. Song Daozhen's eyes suddenly lit up, as if he had understood something. On the second floor, two figures looked serious. They were the disciples of the Xia family and the Bei family. I didn't expect that Yi Guqin could defeat Song Daozhen with one strike. Although his cultivation is not high, his strength is not weak. Damn it. If he didn't have a powerful aunt, our two families would have gotten rid of this kid. What can we do? If our two families take action and his aunt finds out, it will be a disaster for our families. Obviously, Xuansu's killing of the Bei family's divine soul realm elder with one finger had become a nightmare for the two families. Although we can't take action, we can kill him with a borrowed knife. You mean, bloodthirsty tower? Chapter 92. Yi Guqin's lips curled into a faint smile as he walked out of Shang River City. He knew that his battle with Song Daozhen had been witnessed by someone. If he was not mistaken, it should be the spies of the Xia and Bei clans. However, Yi Guqin did not care. They did not attack directly, which proved that they were still afraid of Xuansu. Yi Guqin was still on guard. Although the two clans might not attack openly, it was hard to say what they would do in secret. However, with Yi Guqin's current cultivation, he was not someone who would be bullied easily. If the two clans forced him, Yi Guqin would not mind paying the price to deal with them. He shook his head and temporarily put aside the matter of the two clans. Right now, he should focus on forging the soft sword in 3 days. Tongtian Mountain was located a few hundred miles outside of Shang River City. Although the name was domineering, it was just a few barren mountains. Normally, there were few people and no traces of demon beasts. It was truly a place where birds could not fly and people could not be found. 3 days later, Yiguchen arrived at Tongtian Mountain. Not long after, he met the old drunkard. "Little Yiguchen, follow me," the old drunkard called out and brought Yiguchen into the barren mountains. Finally, they arrived at a dark cave. After entering the cave, Yiguchen sensed the smell of iron and gunpowder in the air. Clearly, this was where the old drunkard usually forged. However, most blacksmiths had their own forging rooms. For example, Heavenly Forging Pavilion's Chu Shiqing had a well-equipped forging room. It was Yiguchen's first time seeing a cave as a forging room. Just as Yiguchen was doubtful about this cave-like forging room, he saw a scene that surprised him. The space in front of him suddenly expanded and then went down vertically. It was actually hollow. The pitch-black hole seemed bottomless. "This is..." Yiguchen was slightly surprised. "This is an extinct volcano, but with the special flames of heaven and earth, we can still stir up the remaining earth fire and make it convenient to smelt metal ores," the old drunkard said. Yiguchen nodded slightly. The old drunkard was indeed generous to use an extinct volcano as a forging furnace. "Alright, little Yi, let's cut the crap. You have to refine the heavenly sun Xianming fire first," old drunkard said. "Yes." Yiguchen nodded slightly. In order to be able to forge a sword Dao weapon in the future, he also needed the help of the heaven and earth unique flames. "Oh right, there's also this." Yiguchen seemed to have thought of something. His origin ring flashed, and the corpse of a huge demonic beast fell into the cave. "This is..." The old drunkard was speechless. "The demonic beast that guards the heavenly sun Xianming fire. Its crystal armor is extremely sturdy. Perhaps it can be used to forge a defensive spirit weapon," Yiguchen said. Even with his temperament, he couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. Since he had already asked the old drunkard to help him forge a soft sword, asking him to forge a defensive spirit weapon was a little too much. However, to Yiguchen's surprise, the old drunkard didn't have any reaction. Instead, he nodded slightly and said, "It's not impossible for me to forge a defensive spirit weapon for you. However, after this old man has something to ask of you." Senior's kindness to this junior is unforgettable. If there's anything, this junior will do his best. Yiguchen cupped his hands slightly. He was sincere. Although the old drunkard didn't teach him anything about Sword Dao, he had helped him a lot. Just the fact that he had forged the Calamity Dust Sword was a great favor. If he didn't have the complete Calamity Dust Sword, Yiguchen's strength would drop a lot. "Alright, don't be in a hurry to thank me. By the way, since this demonic beast guards the heaven and earth unique flames, its demonic core must be contaminated with the power of the heaven and earth unique flames. You can refine this demonic core and then refine the heavenly sun Xianming fire. Perhaps it will be smoother," the old drunkard said. Yiguchen nodded slightly. With the old drunkard's guidance, he could indeed avoid many detours. He held the Calamity Dust Sword in his hand and took out the demonic core of the Icefire Dragon Lizard. Surprisingly, he took out 2 demonic cores, one for each head. One was crimson red, and the other was dark blue. Then, Yiguchen calmed his mind and began to wrap his genuine qi to refine the 2 demonic cores. As for the old drunkard, he began to peel off the Icefire Dragon Lizard's crystal armor. Just like that, day after day passed. Refining a demonic core might not be easy for an ordinary warrior because the power of the demonic core was extremely violent. It was difficult to suppress it with genuine qi alone. However, Yiguchen had too much energy in his body. 360 golden sword veins, 3,000 heaven-splitting sword souls, a wisp of devouring power, and a perfect body could suppress the power of the demonic core. Therefore, this refining process didn't cause any problems. In the end, the power of ice and fire circulated around Yiguchen's body. The light on the surface of his body circulated between crimson red and dark blue. It looked extremely strange. Now, Boy, wrap your genuine qi around the heavenly sun Xianming fire and refine it. The old drunkard shouted. Yi Guqian crushed the crystal that wrapped the heavenly sun Xianming fire. In an instant, the cluster of heavenly sun Xianming fire was very human-like. It seemed to sense that it was about to be refined, and the flames surged. If it were an ordinary warrior, not to mention touching the heavenly sun Xianming fire, just getting close to it would be in danger of being burned. However, Yi Guqian had a perfect body. In addition to the Vajra celestial body, he had also refined the ice-fire dragon lizard's demonic core. It could be said that he had developed antibodies to the power of ice and fire. In an instant, just as the heavenly sun Xianming fire enveloped Yi Guqian, the power of the ice-fire dragon lizard circulated around Yi Guqian's body. He was faintly immune to the heavenly sun Xianming fire. Boy, swallow the fire seed into your body, then refine it into your dantian. Circulate it in a major cycle and it will be considered a success, the old drunkard instructed from the side. As an artificer, he had also refined powerful rare flames of heaven and earth. Naturally, he knew how dangerous it was to refine such a fire seed. However, he could also see that Yi Guqian had hidden his strength deeply and had many tricks up his sleeve. Perhaps he really could refine the heavenly sun Xianming fire in one go. Ah! Yi Guqian gritted his teeth, but a faint groan of pain still came from the gaps between his teeth. Although there were various methods, rare flames of heaven and earth were not ordinary things. If they could be refined so easily, then wouldn't every artificer have one? However, the reality was that more than 90% of artificers did not have rare flames of heaven and earth. Such a flame was rare and powerful. It was definitely not easy to find. Even if it was found, it would be very difficult to refine. At this moment, Yi Guqian felt as if a red-hot soldering iron had been placed in his body, emitting a scorching heat that seemed to scorch his internal organs. Fortunately, Yi Guqian's marrow-cleansing scripture had been cultivated to minor completion. His internal organs were sturdy and protected by a mysterious force. Otherwise, just swallowing the fire seed would have seriously injured him. I don't believe. Yi Guqian gritted his teeth. The 360 golden sword veins in his body glowed brightly as he pressed the fire seed into his dantian. Did he succeed? The old drunkard could not help but watch as he felt the aura in Yi Guqian's body. But in the next moment, the old drunkard's expression changed drastically. Because Yi Guqian's entire body, including every pore, was emitting flames. This kid actually pressed the fire seed into his dantian. Isn't he courting death? The old drunkard stomped his foot in anger. Chapter 93. Pushing the fire seed into the dantian and pushing the fire seed into the qi si were two completely different concepts. The qi si was located in the dantian. If the fire seed was also pushed into the dantian, there would be no conflict between the two. But if the fire seed was pushed into the qi si, it was equivalent to putting a nuclear bomb into the heart. Moreover, given the tyrannical power of the heaven and earth flame, as soon as it entered the qi si, it would immediately ignite. Then, as the old drunkard had seen, one's entire body would be covered in flames. In fact, Yi Guqian's qi had been ignited, which was why it was like this. This kid, is he really stupid or does he not want to live anymore? The old drunkard sighed as he watched the rising heavenly sun Xianming fire completely engulf Yi Guqian's body. He could only vaguely see a figure that was becoming more and more charred. Sigh, could this old man have really misjudged? I originally thought that I had found a true genius of the sword Dao who could inherit that forbidden forging technique and fulfill my wish, but I didn't expect. The old drunkard sighed deeply. He had long seen that Yi Guqian was extraordinary. Whether it was his temperament, constitution, or comprehension, they were all superior. It was because of this that he gradually came into contact with Yi Guqian. But no matter what, it was all for naught. The old drunkard had seen people who had mistakenly pushed the fire seed into the qi sea, but without exception, they all ended up very miserable. Qi flowed through the body, so the flames would also spread throughout the body, burning every vein, every bone, and every piece of flesh. The pain of being burned by the flames was unbearable for anyone. Not a single one of them managed to escape death. Perhaps refining an ordinary fire seed could save a life, but the heaven and earth flame was so tyrannical that it could not be extinguished unless the body was completely burned. But what surprised the old drunkard was that the figure wrapped in the heavenly sun Xianming fire did not let out a cry of pain or wail from beginning to end. It was as if he had already expected this situation. At the same time, the old drunkard vaguely saw Yiguchen's hands move within the raging flames, forming a hand seal. Could it be that this kid is cultivating? A ridiculous and unbelievable thought popped up in old drunkard's mind. But what kind of cultivation method was this, that it actually required such a suicidal cultivation method? This was no different from suicide. As time passed, the shock in the old drunkard's eyes deepened. This was because he had actually sensed that Yiguchen, who had originally been on the brink of death, was now faintly permeating with vitality. It was like a phoenix bathing in flames, undergoing nirvana and rebirth. Just how many more secrets does this kid have? For a moment, the old drunkard couldn't see through Yiguchen. At this moment, Yiguchen cleared away all distracting thoughts and focused on cultivation. Naturally, he was going through the first minor tribulation of his qi-si spiritual tribulation. Ever since the old drunkard asked him to refine the heavenly sun Xianming fire, he had already made up his mind to undergo the qi-si spiritual tribulation. The heavenly sun profound underworld fire was considered a superior fire seed even among the rare flames of heaven and earth. It was naturally the most suitable fire for the tribulation. In addition, Yiguchen's body had already adapted to the power of ice and fire, so it was safer to use the heavenly sun profound underworld fire to undergo the tribulation. However, the process of the tribulation was still extremely painful for Yiguchen. Even with layers of protection, Yiguchen still felt as if his soul was burning. The pain of the qi-si spiritual tribulation was no less than the pain of the blood tribulation. However, in order to become stronger, in order to reach the peak of the qi refining realm, Yiguchen gritted his teeth and persevered for a long time. With the passage of time, Yiguchen seemed to have become numb to the pain. The true qi in his body was ignited by the heavenly sun profound underworld fire, including the entire qi-si, which was also raging with flames, as if it was about to collapse. However, the silent cultivation of the Nine Tribulations Heart Sutra allowed the qi-si to retain a trace of vitality. The entire qi-si, which enveloped the true qi in his body, was burned by the heavenly sun profound underworld fire over and over again. Just like smelting and forging, it burned away all the impurities in the true qi. Finally, at a certain moment, in Yiguchen's qi-si, a faint golden light flickered. It was a wisp of golden true qi, which was extremely condensed and dazzling. At the same time, it contained a great amount of power, which was far from ordinary true qi. As the first wisp of golden true qi appeared, the second wisp, the third wisp, like a chain reaction, more and more golden true qi was emitted. Finally, as the qi-si revolved, the entire qi-si stirred up a whirlpool, and a dazzling golden light bloomed. Boom! At a certain moment, the old drunkard was shocked to see that Yiguchen, who was wrapped in flames, was covered in golden light, as if he was a Vajra Buddha. Endless golden true qi gushed out of his body. Even the heavenly sun profound underworld fire could not burn this golden true qi. This is heterogeneous true qi. How is it possible? Heterogeneous true qi is not only so strong, but it's also so powerful. The old drunkard was very knowledgeable, and he recognized the heterogeneous true qi at a glance. In this world, there were indeed some methods, such as cultivation methods, secret techniques, and so on that could allow people to cultivate heterogeneous true qi, such as icy true qi, raging true qi, and so on. However, he had never seen such vigorous and pure golden true qi before. He had never heard of it, nor seen it before. However, even the old drunkard was shocked by the power hidden within the golden true qi. What kind of cultivation method is this kid cultivating? The old drunkard could not help but exclaim. However, he did not think too much about it. Everyone had their secrets. The old drunkard originally thought that Yiguchen was stupid, but now that he thought about it, he was the laughable one. This kid. It seems that this old man's eyes were not wrong. Seeing that Yiguchen was safe and sound, the old drunkard's hanging heart was finally at ease. The heavenly sun profound underworld fire gradually dissipated, and Yiguchen stood up. The charred black dead skin on his body had fallen off, revealing his jade-like sparkling skin. This kind of skin would make any woman jealous. Coupled with Yiguchen's handsome appearance, his temperament was even more outstanding. Yiguchen's origin ring flashed, and he took out a new black robe and put it on. Feeling the powerful true qi surging in his body, Yiguchen smiled. His cultivation had relied on the Sea of Qi's spiritual tribulation to make a small breakthrough and enter the sixth cycle of qi refining. However, the biggest gain was still the golden Sea of Qi. Now Yiguchen felt that his strength had been greatly improved again. The power of the golden true qi should be far beyond his imagination. Yiguchen really wanted to find an expert to test it out, but unfortunately, he had other things to do. Kid, have you refined the heavenly sun profound underworld fire? The old drunkard asked with a burning gaze. He did not ask about Yiguchen's golden true qi. Obviously, he did not intend to ask. When Yiguchen heard this, he also understood tacitly. He raised his hands slightly and snapped his fingers. A cluster of crimson-red flames wrapped in dark blue flames emerged. The extreme temperature of the alternating cold and hot caused the air around the flames to distort. Not bad. After refining the heavenly sun profound underworld fire, it will be a great weapon for both forging and fighting. The old drunkard nodded with satisfaction. Next, let's start forging, the old drunkard said. Yiguchen's eyes suddenly blazed. Was he finally going to start forging the soft sword? This also meant that Yiguchen had the qualifications to comprehend the hard and soft sword essence. Chapter 94. The difficulty level of forging a flexible sword was definitely not comparable to ordinary swords. Fortunately, there was a mysterious blacksmith like the old drunkard to guide him, so Yiguchen was not completely clueless. Boy, use the heavenly sun Xianming fire to stir up the earth core fire, the old drunkard instructed. Yiguchen nodded slightly and urged the golden true qi in his sea of qi to flow into the refined fire seed. In an instant, Yiguchen made his move. The heavenly sun Xianming fire burst out like a fire dragon, rushing into the dark and deep underground. The flame is not strong enough. Again, the old drunkard scolded. At this moment, he was like a blacksmith teacher, strict with Yiguchen. Yiguchen urged his true qi again, and the flame burned even brighter, pouring into the ground. If it were an ordinary qi refinement warrior, it would be difficult to support such a consumption of true qi, but Yiguchen now had a golden sea of qi that was hundreds of meters long. Whether in terms of density or quality, it was far from what an ordinary person could compare to. Finally, at a certain moment, Yiguchen felt as if the whole volcano seemed to tremble. Immediately, the scarlet earth core fire was stirred up from the ground, illuminating the whole cave as if it was daytime. Throw in the materials that need to be smelted, soften them, and then hammer them 1,000 times, the old drunkard instructed. Yiguchen drove the golden ring heavenly silk steel, meteorite iron, and other treasured materials with his true qi, and threw them into the roiling flames. As for the mysterious silver heavy water, it did not need to be smelted. This boy actually found a treasure like the meteorite iron. The old drunkard was slightly surprised to see the meteorite iron. With the meteorite iron, Yiguchen's flexible sword could be inscribed with one more spiritual pattern, and the sword's attribute power would naturally increase. Softening a precious material was not an easy task. If it were a true master blacksmith, they would need to rest intermittently in order to maintain the release of the heaven and earth rare flame. However, Yiguchen did not rest from beginning to end, and his true qi was continuously channeled. 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, in the end, even the old drunkard was shocked. How big is this kid's sea of qi? He actually has such a vigorous true qi. He believed that he had seen a lot of things, but he had never seen anyone with true qi as vigorous as Yiguchen's. Finally, after 8 hours, the golden ring heavenly silkworm silk steel and the other treasured materials had shrunk by a whole size. A lot of impurities had also been extracted, leaving behind only the essence. Kid, the next step is to repeatedly forge. I'll leave this heavenly spirit vibrating hammer to you. Old drunkard took out his pitch-black hammer. Yiguchen recognized it at a glance. It was the hammer that the old drunkard had wanted to exchange for money. The moment Yiguchen received the heavenly spirit vibrating hammer, his entire hand sank. So heavy. Yiguchen was slightly surprised. This hammer weighed at least 1,000 pounds. Ordinary people would find it difficult to even pick up the hammer, let alone wield it. However, Yiguchen had the power of the dragon elephant and a perfect body, so he could use it at will. When using the heavenly spirit vibrating hammer, inject true qi into it and the efficiency of refining impurities will be higher, the old drunkard said. Yiguchen held the heavenly spirit vibrating hammer and walked to the forging table at the side. Then, he began to forge the golden ring heavenly silkworm silk steel and the other treasured materials. It could be said that the most important factor in determining the quality of a spiritual artifact was forging. The quality of a spiritual artifact produced from 100 refinements, 1,000 refinements, and 10,000 refinements were all different. Kid, in this old man's eyes, 100 refinements and 1,000 refinements are all trash. 10,000 refinements are barely acceptable, but that's all there is to it. If you want a good divine weapon, you have to forge it. So, my requirement for you is at least 10,000 refinements, the old drunkard said. Yiguchen had no objections. He also wanted to forge a higher quality soft sword, so he naturally wouldn't be stingy. However, forging was easier said than done. It wasn't just swinging the hammer. One had to constantly inject true qi, which would put a huge burden on the body. Even with Yiguchen's temperament and cultivation, his forehead was sweating and his hands were sore when he reached 5,000 refinements. But he still persevered. Every time the heavenly spirit vibrating hammer fell, it would erupt with a vibrating force to remove the impurities in the treasured materials. Half a day later, Yiguchen reached 10,000 refinements, but he didn't stop. 20,000 refinements, 30,000 refinements, in the end, even with Yiguchen's strong physique and 100 feet of qi, there were slight signs of depletion. 40,000 refinements. 50,000 refinements, the old drunkard's gaze was solemn. Yiguchen's perseverance and dedication to the sword had exceeded his imagination. In the end, after 3 days, Yiguchen's face was pale and his lips were as white as paper. He had poured all his energy, blood, and qi into forging. The last hammer, Yiguchen raised his numb arm, gathered true qi, and slammed the hammer down for the last time. Boom! The sound of the hammer was like the wrath of heavenly thunder. Even the golden ring heavenly silk steel, meteorite iron, and other treasured materials were shaken and released an incomparably resplendent brilliance. It's actually the light of treasured materials. This kid really completed 10,000 refinements. Even the old drunkard was a little shocked. It wasn't that he hadn't completed 10,000 refinements before, but it was too difficult. Even the old drunkard rarely made 10,000 refinements in his life. He would only use 10,000 refinements when forging truly rare and powerful divine weapons. But in front of him, a youth who was forging for the first time could actually do 10,000 refinements. This kind of temperament, perseverance, persistence, and dedication shocked the old drunkard. Every piece of treasured material was like a golden crystal, emitting a resplendent brilliance. Kid, the next step is to fuse the sword embryo. After that, leave the rest to me, the old drunkard said. Yiguchin nodded and forced the last of his energy to fuse these treasured materials, including the mysterious silver heavy water, together to form a rough embryo. After that, Yiguchin had exhausted too much of his energy, so he sat cross-legged to recuperate. The rest of the process was completed by the old drunkard. But while Yiguchin was recuperating, he was also silently learning from the old drunkard's forging. To fuse spiritual runes, one needed to be at the divine soul realm and above to fuse spiritual power with true qi. Yiguchin couldn't do it yet, but he could observe the old drunkard's technique. It had to be said that after looking at it, Yiguchin felt that even the pavilion masters of the heavenly forging pavilion in the Saint Origin dynasty were not as good as the old drunkard. More importantly, the old drunkard's hands were slightly disabled. Yiguchin couldn't imagine what level the old drunkard's forging technique would reach if his hands weren't disabled. In the end, when the old drunkard fused the spiritual runes into the soft sword, he also used his heavenly flame. The purplish-black flame rolled endlessly, and the shocking temperature made Yiguchin sweat. It was even higher grade than his heavenly sun profound nether flame. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.